Hello everybody, welcome into my latest broadcast. Today is Thursday, the 24th of October. Getting a little bit later start than I intended, but that is the life of the self-employed, right? And you gotta deal with stuff when it happens, and Murphy's Law says it's gonna happen 5 minutes before you're committed to doing something else. So thank you all for hanging in there and for being patient so we can get the show on the road, get it started. And not even so much as having time to get my drink prepared before broadcast. That's how far behind I'm running today. So thank you guys so much for hanging in there. And again, I apologize for the delay. So with that said, I'm gonna get right into it. This is a machine I built right here, built September 2019. I built this machine last month. The machine, like many others you see me build here, was then packaged up and mailed to the customer. Now this customer isn't that far away. I think they're in California. And the customer sent me some screenshots of they said the computer ran fine for about a week, and then it started to display weird graphics on the screen at startup, like it won't even boot into Windows anymore. Now I suspect a bad RAM module, but the customer, the reason why people often pay me to build a machine for them is they are intimidated by the process, or they don't have the time, or they don't trust themselves. And they see my videos. This may be the only way they even know I exist, and they see the care that I take and the knowledge that I share to earn their trust. And while it has never been my intent to promote my business, that has been a side effect of reaching out and showing people. They go, wow, you look like you know what you're doing. Would you do it for me? And of course, the answer is always yes. Why wouldn't I? I love what I do. But every once in a while, and I'm proud to say it only happens once in a while, something goes wrong. After delivery, things can shift in shipping, or parts, sometimes parts go bad. It's generally, as far as I know, nothing I'm doing to cause the problem, or it's hard to sustain a business as long as I have if I'm building it wrong. However, that's always possible. It's always possible that I was in a hurry and I missed something. However, if the machine would have behaved like this for me, there's certainly no way I would have shipped it. That wouldn't make any sense to do that. So whatever it is, it was working, and then all of a sudden it stopped. So the question now is, did something like the RAM shift in shipping, or perhaps in the manufacturing process, something was about to go and then finally went? Who knows? So what I thought I would do is just film the live diagnostic. I've not seen this machine since I shipped it. Everything is live, everything is real, unedited. You're gonna get the whole picture, whether it's flattering or unflattering to me. I have no control over that. But regardless, because I'm a professional, I'm gonna fix it. And if it's something that I did, then I will learn a lesson and I won't do that again. It's not the end of the world. It's really not a big deal. It bothers me probably as much as it bothers the customer, probably more, that it requires a repair. Like, I take that personally, even though it may not be my fault. And you should feel the same way. If you're building a machine and you have a problem with it, it may not be your fault. You may have a component that, just a little flaky, or it could be something simple, like something's not fully seated. So the first thing we have to do is verify the problem. We have to replicate the problem the customer's having. If we can't replicate the problem, how do we know we fixed it? So for right now, even though I've got that mouse I talked about earlier, I'm not going to use that for this today because I'm running behind and I don't want to play with it. So I'm going to use this secondary keyboard and mouse like I've always done, and we'll plug that into any USB port here in the back. And a couple contributions have come in. Let me say thank you to Jesse Kirk, contributed $5. He says, pour yourself a Coke and enjoy. Thank you, Jesse. Ben DeCour says, hey, Carey and friends, hope everyone is doing well. And he's contributed at $4.99. Jesse and Ben have been frequent contributors. I appreciate you guys, your continued support of the channel. Andrew Epperson's contributed $2. He says, thank you for inspiring to do my first build. Right on, Andrew. And Jeremy Kramer just contributed $20. He says, here's your weekly Coke donation from your local Aurora, Illinois, Mariano's grocery store. Nice. Well, thank you, Jeremy. I don't think I go through $20 worth of Coca-Cola in a week, but it'll certainly go towards the fund for sure. I think a case of it is like 35 cans at Costco for about $12. You got me good for about a few weeks, maybe a month on that. All right. So thank you to all of you for your contributions. First Coke of the day is always the best one. Let's get some power to this bad boy. Let's make sure the power supply is in the off position, right? I don't want to plug it in with the power supply in the on position. 999 times out of 1,000 that won't matter, but that 1,000 times sucks. So I just turn it off to avoid that scenario of there being any sparks or fire. I generally am not a fan of sparks and fire. So I got to get an HDMI cable out here. The HDMI cables, the keyboards, everything that you see me use here on video is listed in my Amazon store, which isn't me selling it, it's just links to the products that I use, because everybody's always asking, where can I get one of those? Where can I get that rotating table? Where can I get the keyboard and mouse? That's all listed in that link. It's like 100 items, including these called Twisted Veins HDMI cables that I use. You guys can purchase those from Amazon, because that's where I purchased them. If you make any purchase from Amazon using one of my links, the channel makes a small commission on it. So if you're purchasing anything from Amazon and you want to support the channel, if you go to one of my videos and click on a link that takes you to Amazon, and then once that link takes you there, no matter what you do at Amazon, if you make a purchase, there is a commission, even if it's completely unrelated to the item that the link brought you to. The commission's based on it was my link that took you to Amazon. So anything you purchase at Amazon then becomes a commission for the channel. And you're not charged any differently. You're going to pay the exact same amount. So anyway, food for thought for those of you who wish to contribute in that way, just so you know, and for full disclosure that the channel does make money from that. And even if it's a small purchase, if enough of you make small purchases, they add up. So, and I appreciate if you're thinking of me and thinking of the channel, and it's stuff you're going to buy anyway for the same price you're going to pay anyway. So why not? All right. So I just got that plugged into the capture card, and we'll plug the other end into the graphics card, and I want to pull the side panel off and see what's going on too before I do anything else. So this is the Milwaukee M4 driver that I use, the screwdriver. And again, it's, oh, this is interesting. 2 screws are missing. So the customers had the panels off. Customers had both panels off and didn't put the screws back. So what I'm going to do, I'll take the one, there's only screws at the top. Customer did not put the screws on the bottom. I don't think I need to take this panel off. Now we're missing 2 screws from one panel. I've got spare screws. It's the customer's computer. They're welcome to take the panel off if they want. I'm not quite sure who advised them or if anybody advised them to do that. And it looks like they had added, I'm not sure what's happening here. There are 3 SATA cables and several power cables. And this graphics card looks a little twisted. So this is a little bit disheartening to know the customer did something. The customer was in here. Now, the customer has every right to be in there. It's their machine, but the customer did not disclose this information to me. They made it sound like they received the computer, it worked great for a week, and now it doesn't work. They never once told me that they opened it up or that they manipulated or changed anything on the inside of it. Furthermore, they've got duct tape in here. So once again, I'm having a real hard time understanding this, because this computer's only a few weeks old, and already it's been unnecessarily MacGyvered. So we're missing 2 screws. I mean, there were screws there. Where did they go? I mean, there's a certain amount of carelessness here. I wouldn't ship it to a customer the way they shipped it to me. However, this is all information that I have to use as I diagnose to determine what the most likely cause of the problem is. Now, I'm noticing we have 4 sticks of RAM in here. And if, while the customer was in here, they had bumped these in any way, shape, or form, one of these may not be fully seated. If it wasn't fully seated and it didn't have a good connection, it could have damaged the module permanently. So there's a lot of what if happening right now. But what's really bothering me, really bothering me is the angle this card is on. It's not seated correctly. And I suspect the customer had to take this card out to put these SATA cables in. I don't believe, and we have a video of this being built. I don't believe that I put these in. I think the customer did this. And in order for the customer to get to these ports that they plug into, this card is in the way, it has to come out. So I think this customer, caused their own problem. Now, this is important, not in pointing blame. It's important for me to know if I did something wrong, right? Because I immediately assume the customer hasn't changed anything unless the customer told me they changed things. If the customer said, I'm going to add some hard drives, I'd say go right ahead. If the customer said, I'm not going to put screws back, I'm like, well, go ahead. But none of this information was conveyed to me. So as a result, I'm left with the default belief that everything is as I sent it, and it is not. Now I'm not surprised that there's a problem, and I don't think it's anything I did. So that gives me a little sense of, phew. Now, I don't care if it's a customer-caused problem or if it's a manufacturing part or a shipping issue. I don't care. I'm going to fix it no matter what. What I do care about is if there's a lesson in it for me. I don't think there is. I think there's a lesson in it for the customer. There's some carelessness here on behalf of the customer. A carelessness of not putting the screws in correctly or putting them back where they came from. There's a carelessness in how this video card is sitting. It is not installed correctly. And that carelessness is probably a result of the problem. So we can learn from this, and we can learn if we're going to do this, it's important that you take your time and you're very detail-oriented, or you may find yourself in this position, which is completely avoidable. Now, I am making assumptions right now, and I'm making them based on what I'm seeing. Like if everything was sent back to me the way I sent it, then I'd start thinking I did something wrong or a component has gone bad. But now it looks like the customer has manipulated the components in a way that is not how I demonstrate and was not put back the way it was. And if any component is damaged, I believe it's a fault of the customers now. Regardless of fault, and I want to emphasize this, it's about where is the learning experience in it? Is there a learning experience in this for me? Is there a learning experience in it in regards to how I ship? Is there a learning experience in the parts that I choose? Is there a learning experience on behalf of the end user when they take something brand new and start fiddling with it? The caution they need to take or the respect they need to show it. Regardless of any of the lessons to be learned, I have a job to do. And all of that falls to the side. It's only my goal to help people to avoid making the same mistake twice. And I will hope that when this customer gets the machine back and they put whatever was in here back in here, that they do so with more caution and more attention to detail. If you take screws out, you put screws back in. If you choose not to, and you have consequences as a result, you have no one to blame but yourself. That has nothing to do with me. That has nothing to do with the parts manufacturer, right? So just so we're clear on that, this looks like it was completely avoidable. So anyway, that's all assumption. I haven't turned it on yet. So again, I'm not trying to publicly shame anybody. I'm just trying to say, what can we learn from this, right? I'm trying to do a forensic analysis like a coroner and say, how did it die and was its death avoidable? So before I even turn this on, I am not going to power it on with the card sitting like this. It suggests, with the card sitting like this, it suggests to me it's not fully seated. It's not fully seated into the slot correctly. It looks like half of it is out of the slot. And I can't tell. I can't tell because everything's in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the HDMI cable and the power cable from the video card, and I'm going to take the video card out and examine it. Because I don't want to, if it's not seated correctly, putting power to it could short circuit it and damage it. And that's an expensive video card. That card alone is worth the price of a computer. And as such, this is a 2080 Ti. There are people that can buy 2 computers for the cost of this single graphics card. And to handle this so carelessly, I don't know what else to say. Now, I also should say it's entirely possible the customer, that this happened in shipping. However, because the customer says it worked great for a week, it appears, in all likelihood, based on the duct tape and the lack of screws, that this was not installed correctly. But I am assuming. So let's see if we can get this out. It is a weird warp on this card, very strange. Now I know you guys can't see much, but believe me, I can't see much either. I'm just kind of feeling for the release lever on this card. And it's back there and I can feel it, but it won't move. And I think it won't move because the card is sitting in incorrectly. I think they just jammed it in there. So that's good enough. And it's not good enough. Absolutely unacceptable. For just this reason. It's creating an unavoidable situation. Nothing really sort of gets under my skin more, and the customers have a right to do this. I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying, but you hired me to do a job for you. If you have to come in after me and modify the job I did, you should have had me do the whole thing for you so that you didn't have to do that. So this very situation would not arise. If you told me, I want you to add these hard drives for me and mailed me the drives, I would have put them in for you. I hate the idea that somebody paid me to do a job and then they had to turn around and open the computer and modify it. That really bothers me because it's like, why didn't you have me do that for you? It's a little insulting to me. You didn't trust me? I don't know. It's weird. Or maybe they thought it's no big deal. I'll do it myself. Well, was it no big deal? I want to help. I just want to help. And if you won't let me help and you won't tell me you need help, then I end up in this situation. Which, just like I said, it kind of bothers me because this is what I do, and you should have just let me do just tell me what you need and I'll take care of it for you. But regardless, it's part of what comes with the business. And again, I talk about the difference all the time here on this channel about what makes my channel different from the hobbyists and enthusiast tech channels you see on YouTube. You don't see this. You don't get to see what customers may or may not do with the hardware after you've built it, and then turn around and send it back to you to fix. Because after all, you're the one who built it. Who better to send it to for repair? And I want to fix it, but I would rather it never needed to be fixed. I would rather it was built the way the customer needed it, and that the customer never needed to take the panel off other than to look and admire the quality of the work that was done. So that's just sort of what comes with the job. You get that from time to time. Doesn't make him a bad customer or a bad guy. I just wish that process was followed to avoid this. If there's a situation that's avoidable, why didn't we avoid it? You know what I mean? That's all I'm getting at. That's it. It has nothing to do with being good or bad. It's just, I want to help. And if you won't let me help and you won't tell me, I guess we're going to do it the hard way. regardless of what I want. One of the reasons I do managed service for my clients is I take all that decision making out of their hands. I come in and I say, look, I'm going to take care of your computers. I'm going to make sure they're all updated, they're all optimized, they're all latest BIOS, make sure the firmware on the SSDs is the latest, that the trim command is running, make sure all the Windows updates are current and installed, make sure your antivirus is paid for and updated and virus scans are running, make sure your data is backed up, encrypted, and taken off site, so that the customer doesn't have any decisions to make when it comes to the infrastructure. They don't wait until there's a problem and then call me with an emergency and expect that I'm doing nothing else and I'm just going to drop, because clearly I'm doing nothing and I'll just jump in the car and anytime they call, immediately drop what I'm doing and go. So when you're dealing with people, businesses in particular, where money's at stake, customers are waiting to be helped, their customers, not mine, then they're waiting on me so they can help their clients. It adds a lot of stress, and I prefer not to have that stress. I'm just weird that way. So if customers allow me to manage their systems, I take care of everything so they don't have to worry about it. And the only decisions they have to make is, do you want to upgrade this hardware? How much do you want to spend, and when do you want it done? So anyway, that's a part of the job I really enjoy, because if I screw up, if I fail to do my job, it is punishing me. I'll be the one who has to clean it up. But when you have customers, and this is unrelated to this, but it's sort of bringing my mind into that frame where I've had customers that want to be reactive. They want to wait until there's a problem and then call me. And the problem is always 10 times worse than if they would have, because a lot of customers, they wait until they have to call you. So they'll live with a minor problem until it becomes a major problem. And what would have been a 5-minute fix now becomes an all-day fix. What would have been a small bill for labor becomes a big bill for labor. Customers never like to get a big bill for labor. They don't like it. So by putting people on a maintenance plan, on a monthly maintenance plan, they have a fixed amount of money they're going to spend to maintain their computers. It's not an unknown number every year. We'll see. What's my IT budget going to be this year? We'll see. Depends on how many problems we have. If we can put steps in to reduce the likelihood of that, it keeps them up and running. And it's a hard thing to calculate to customers if they're not having any problems. And you're trying to explain to them the reason you're not having any problems is because you're paying me to prevent, to do what I can to prevent the problems. And furthermore, when the problems occur, we see them and react to them right away. We don't wait until they become unmanageable, and then I get the call. So there's a couple of variables at play here. But sometimes customers, until they've experienced it, they just don't understand it, right? So everything's an opportunity for learning and for growing. And sometimes it's events like this that need to happen in order for that perspective to change. Not always, but sometimes. And I get that, right? Until you've experienced it firsthand. Backups are that way. A lot of people haven't lost data yet. And so making backups is not a priority for them. The first time they lose data, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, suddenly backups become like a religion. You start doing that with regularity, and with a devotion that it gets done, because you never want to go through that again. And sometimes that's what it takes. In the meantime, I got a little off topic because I don't want this customer to think I'm talking about them. It just sort of reminds me of similar scenarios, and why I do what we call MSP, or managed service providing, is to avoid situations like this. A couple other contributions have come in. Let me give a couple shots out here. This is, let's see. Brendan Looney's contributed £2 and says hello. Kevin Lavis has contributed £5. He says, thanks, Carey, for helping me with the RAM problem. Right on, Kevin. Glad you got it figured out. Chester Hughes has contributed $2. John Craig, £5. He says, customers like that are the reason I retired. And then Randy Hopkins has contributed $2. He says, hello from Greenfield, Indiana. Right on. Hey, guys, thanks for all your support, from all of you. And yes, it is kind of a delicate rope to walk sometimes because people are sensitive, right? You're shaming me, and I'm not. I'm trying to use this as a learning example to say, look, these are consequences, right? Regardless of fault, I want to help. I want to help, and I want to make that very, very clear. And one of the ways I help is by trying to advise you to avoid needing the help to begin with. Does that make any sense? Which is weird because I make my living from this. So basically what I'm telling you is to put me out of business. That is a terrible business plan. But you know, there are real problems that need to be solved. And I really would rather focus my time on real problems. And when I say real, what I mean is you can't control if a power supply fails. You can't control if your solid state drive fails, your motherboard fails, a power spike comes, or somebody robs you. There's some things we have no control over. And it is my greatest sense of fulfillment to solve those problems. And it is a secondary sense of fulfillment to tell you and to advise you how to avoid being the guy in the first scenario, you know, or what you can do to minimize the downtime and the psychological trauma that can result from loss of data, whether that's from fires and thefts or floods or ransomware, lack of backup, lack of a current backup, lack of an encrypted off-site backup. There's lots of different avenues for psychological trauma, and it's amplified by people that use their computers to make money, because that means they're not making money and they're losing money. So that's happening at the same time. So the trauma in there is very serious. Anyway, I'm trying to get this card out. The reason I'm talking to you is I'm getting a little frustrated, and you don't want to force the card out. If you need to take a little break, if you get a little frustrated and you're getting angry and you want to throw it across the room, walk away, because throwing it across the room isn't going to make it better. It's only going to make a bad situation worse. So when you see me taking this break to talk to you, what I'm doing is I'm kind of resetting my mind, and then I'm going to go at it fresh again, and it'll come out real easy. I promise you. When you have to struggle and you start getting frustrated, that's when you need to just find a little distraction, take a little break. And then when you come back at it, you might have to do that a couple of times, but eventually you're going to come back at it, and it's just going to come out so effortlessly, you're going to wonder why was it so hard the first couple times? But you know, it's delicate equipment to a certain extent. And brute force is never a way to deal with electronics, unless your goal is to destroy it. And that card is really not coming out. I mean, it sucker is, something's not right here. And I can feel the clasp moving. And it's bothering me that I have left this plugged in with the switch off, but there's no benefit to leaving that plugged in. There's no benefit to that. There's no reason to do that. People online will say, well, it's safe. Probably. But I guarantee it is 100% if it's not plugged in. I'd rather go with the guarantee. Come on. So the clasp, there's like a hook on this graphics card, and this clasp grabs onto it to lock it in place. And when you see me reaching back here, I'm moving that clasp, and it is moving, but it's not moving enough. And so I'm trying to get the card out. Generally it won't come out on an angle. You sort of have to bring the whole card out at the same time. There it is. And there's no clasp. It's completely missing. What was I moving? That's very interesting to me. What I'm referring to, right down here, you'll see this plastic clasp at the end of the graphics card, or the end of the PCI Express slot. And the one up here is missing. Now, that's happened before in shipping, where the clasp has broken off, and it's not critical. But I can't help but wonder if the customer did that. Now I'll never know. One way I might know is if it's floating around in the case. And the one way you can tell is simply pick the case up and shake it. Yeah, there it is. There it is. And it looks like it's not broken. It looks like it'll snap back in. And again, it's not absolutely required to have this. So I was moving it. It must have come out. I don't know if that will go back in or if something is broken. And again, and I want to emphasize this, this will not affect the functionality of the computer. What it does do is it gives me a little peace of mind that that card isn't going to break free in shipping. But if the computer isn't being shipped, then we don't have much to worry about. It looks like it slides in underneath. There it is. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. It's just clicked right back into place. Phew. This is absolutely 100% live, unscripted, and unedited. I have no idea what's going to happen next. Just like real life is a real life technician. When you get a customer's machine, you don't know. Until you get it, you don't know. And so this is how I teach. I say, here's a real machine from a real customer. In this case, I'm the one who built it, so I know it was built well, and I know it was built with good parts. Why are we having a problem? And before I test it, I want to make sure that things are the way they're supposed to be. Before I add power to the system, things could have shifted in shipping, such as the case with that latch. It may not be a result of anything the customer did, but the customer did do stuff, okay? So I'm not gonna sit there and blame the customer for the reason for this, but I do know that the customer was in there, and that may be a factor in this situation, all right? That's it. It's completely cold and analytical. It's not personal. All right, so let me plug it back in, and we're gonna run off the onboard video on this just to verify if we have a RAM problem. We should see the same symptoms with regards to the system not booting. And then I'll plug the graphics card in if everything works, and then see if everything still works. And then we can determine, do we have a graphics card problem? Or do we have a RAM problem? We can run memtest86 and check the RAM. There is a lot of RAM in there. The more RAM you have, the higher the likelihood one of those modules has an issue. The RAM modules may not be seated all the way down, so I just want to push down on them and make sure they're fully seated. And with that being done, I see that the optical drive's still hooked up. I can tell the customer added these 3 SATA cables because the other SATA cable is wire tied. It has wire management. These 3 do not. So I don't even have to go back and look at the video to see if I did that. I can tell I can already tell that wasn't me. The customer did this. I want to emphasize the customer has every right to do this, and the customer should be able to do this. However, the customer could have asked me, and I would have wire tied it, made it all look nice, and verified everything works. But for whatever reason, the customer didn't choose that path. The customer would have paid me the same. There would have been no change in expenses to the customer, other than this, potentially, right? So Let me just verify nothing else is visibly wrong. And everything looks okay. We're booting off an NVMe Drive, which appears to be, I guess it's going to be right under here. You guys probably can't see that. NVMe Drive should be right under here. Customer was thinking that they think their NVMe Drive failed. The one part that they never touched, I'm assuming, right? Because they added the SATA cables, they had to take the graphics card out, and when they put it all back together, they had a problem with the graphics card. So I got a feeling it's related to that. But I want to emphasize, I'm just using logic and the process of deduction. I could be completely wrong, all right? Just letting you know, where's my mind as I'm doing this? What am I thinking? What's going through my mind? What am I looking for? How am I proceeding with the diagnostic? And the first step, if you're just joining us, is taking the graphics card out, and we're going to run off onboard video. I'm going to turn the machine on, and we're going to see if it boots. It's that simple. Let me flip over to the other input. So let me minimize me. I'll put myself right up here, let's say. What did I do? OBS sometimes gives me the wrong, defaults to the wrong camera. Okay, so the no signal is the monitor saying the computer's not turned on, right? So we're going to turn it on now. Switch is in the on position now. We'll hit the power button. Fans are coming on. Lights are lighting up. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Just keeps resetting itself. Wow. Okay. That's all I need to see. I'm not going to let it do that forever because, again, if there's something wrong, it could be causing damage if we leave it on that way. All right. I want to make sure the power supply cable is fully seated, both here and on the top, because that can cause a problem if they're loose. We can just pull on those cables and make sure they don't pop off. And let me do this. I've got a flash drive here with the MemTest 86 software. And when you have a machine that's behaving oddly, in fact, it wouldn't even hurt you if your machine is behaving fine, to make a bootable MemTest flash drive, which I have a video on. And Kevin Lavis, who just recently built a computer, emailed me and said it keeps blue screening when I try to install Windows 10. And I used all these new parts, and I used quality parts, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, Kevin, regardless of that, you need to run this. And I pointed him to that video, and he immediately found bad RAM, and that solved his problem. And he's here in the chat room, and he's saying thank you for that. He's right there. This is absolutely free for you to do this. It'll just take you time. And it doesn't take very much time. Once you've created the flash drive, plug it into any available USB port, and instruct your computer to boot from it. And you don't have to hit any buttons. It just starts to run on its own. So for me, on this machine, I think F12 will get us to the boot menu. If we can get that far, we'll see. I may not get that far. I mean, it's powered up, but it's not going anywhere. So before we run into too many conclusions here, there's a couple different ways we can attack this. My first instinct is to start removing RAM modules. So I want to make sure the motherboard's completely drained of power by hitting the power switch when the power is disconnected, which in this case I've flipped the switch to the off position. I want you to know that this could literally be anything. It could be the motherboard, it could be the NVMe drive, it could be the power supply, it could be one of these cables. Literally everything is suspect at this time. But what I'm going to go for is the most likely culprit. And RAM is the most sensitive component of the system, and he's got a lot of it. So I'm going to take 3 RAM modules out. 1, 2, 3. So all we have is one RAM module. I don't care what slot is in. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not interested in performance. I just want to see if I can get the machine to boot. Now, if that happens to be the bad RAM module, it's also important if we still don't boot that I swap it with another one. That way I will have effectively checked all 4. You with me? Just trying to be efficient here. So let's see if we're going to get a boot this time. Some motherboards won't boot if the RAM is in the wrong slot, but I don't think that matters on this board. I think you can put it in any slot. Jay says, my money is on a missing processor. Well, we wouldn't get this far. We wouldn't get any video. The video is coming from the processor, right? So if there was no processor, if the customer had taken the processor out and put the heatsink back, we would get no video at all. The motherboard would power up and nothing else would happen. So the fact that we're getting that little blinking cursor up in the corner, that tells us it's getting some video output. But we're not getting any further than we were getting. So the next step, I want to replace that RAM module. So take this out, turn it off. We're going to take out this remaining RAM module here. And I'm going to just grab literally any of these remaining ones and put it into a different socket to eliminate a socket problem possibility. So let's go right here. And I'm sure I could pull open the motherboard manual and figure out what slot you're supposed to use for one module, but again, I don't really think it matters as far as booting. I think it matters as far as performance, though I could be wrong on that. So we're getting exactly the same symptoms right now. So with that in mind, we have a couple of different venues we can go down, or a couple of paths we can go down. So here's what's going through my mind right now. Let me go full screen on this so I can look you in the eye when I talk to you. Just one eye. Now the customer may have gone into the BIOS and messed around with something in there, and we can reset the BIOS. It's easy to do that. 2, could have a bad power supply, and it's super easy to grab another power supply. Just replace the motherboard power. You don't have to put a power on anything else, and fire it up outside of the case to see if the motherboard boots up. 3, there could be an issue with the board itself, and that will require taking the board out of the case and setting it into a test bench, which I have, using my own power supply. Remove anything off the board, remove the NVMe Drive, just to see if we can get the board to boot. So how do you decide which one to do next? Well, it's a combination of what's most likely and what's easy, what's fast and easy. Resetting the BIOS is a pretty fast and easy thing to do. So I think I'm going to do that next. The problem is I'm not sure where the BIOS reset is on the board, but every board has got one, and you just have to find it. So I'm going to grab my flashlight, and I'm going to grab my glasses, so I can read the little tiny print on the board. And somewhere, typically near the battery on the motherboard, will be a jumper to reset the BIOS. And as I look in here, here's the battery. And typically somewhere around that battery is a BIOS reset. Just taking a look here. And of course, I can always pull the motherboard manual up online. That's completely free. I'm a little impatient for that, and I like to figure things out on my own. It's my own little game that I play. That's why you often see me throw the manuals around, because to me that's like a walkthrough, right? I want to figure it out, just like a video game. I want to figure it out. So I'm looking at the jumpers on the board and I don't see it yet, but I know it's here somewhere. I see a BIOS chip right there, and it's usually right in near that. There's an empty jumper here, but there's usually a jumper on it. There's a backup BIOS I see. So the empty jumper is the clear BIOS, or clear CMOS. It's an empty jumper. So I have to short that out with something. I'm surprised they didn't give me anything for that. So, I can steal one off the board as long as I remember where I took it so I could put it back. I really don't want to. I'm sure I've got a spare jumper in my parts. Let me go grab one. You could use a screwdriver and short it out, but sometimes it needs to be on there for a few seconds to take effect. So I'll just go back to my office. I've got a bunch of spare parts. It's been a long, long time since I've had to provide a jumper because generally, as I mentioned, on motherboards, the jumper will be there. It'll usually be 3 sets of pins, and the jumper will be on 2 of those 3. And then you put it on you reverse it of whatever, whatever 2 pins it's using, you put it on the pin that's not being used. So if there's 3 pins, it'll be on the middle and the left pin, move it from the middle to the right pin. So anyway, I've got a spare jumper right here. And the clear BIOS is right here. We'll just put that on there. And I want to unplug it. And you can even remove the battery if you want to be ultra. Make sure you've really cleared it out. Like it'll reset your clock and everything. And then I can even try turning it on with the jumper on, and the system won't even turn on right now with that jumper in place. That's normal for some motherboards to do that. It's refusing to accept any power while the BIOS is in a cleared state. So if I remove the jumper, which is right here, if I take this off, right, and now I try and turn it on, still not coming on. Make sure I've got it plugged in all the way. Take my flash drive out of here. So now it's starting to come back on, and let me flip over to that input so I can see what's happening. We'll see if we're going to get any video this time. It may take a little bit longer as the BIOS has to re-recognize the hardware that's in the system. And there's also a possibility, oh, look at this. Here we go. We've already gotten further. It's restarting, which may be normal. We'll give it a minute to figure out the hardware that's installed. And it's loading Windows right now. Okay, so I'm going to flip back right now to just sort of package up everything we've done here. You've verified with me in a live, unscripted, and unedited video the condition of the computer, the results of turning the machine on and what the customer was experiencing, and the fix. Like, this is the fix. Now, it's probably booting into Windows behind me. I'm not worried about watching that right now. And this all could have been avoided. I am fairly certain the customer went in and changed something in the BIOS, that this didn't just happen on its own. I have to assume that somebody who is willing and able to open up the case and not put the screws back properly and to use duct tape on a brand new $2,500 computer also went in very boldly into the BIOS and started making changes. Now, and I want to emphasize this, you have every right to do that. It's your machine. But what I want to encourage you to ask yourself is it worth it? When I can't speak for anybody else, but if you order a computer from me, when you receive it, It is ready for you to plug into the wall and plug into your graphics card, plug in your keyboard, your mouse, your speakers, your network, turn it on and start using it. You should not have to open up a brand new computer, nor should you have to go into your BIOS and start playing around. If you choose to do that, you may find yourself in this position. And if you don't mind that, I don't mind. I don't mind fixing it. It gives me opportunity to share these experiences with my viewers, with you guys, so you guys can see real world actions and consequences. Now, if you're a techie kind of guy and you like solving problems on your own, all the power to you. There's no better way to learn. But if you don't know and you're getting in over your head, shipping this computer back and forth is about $100 each way. This one may be a little cheaper. This one might be $80 each way. And every time we ship it, we risk damaging it, right? Because it's being handled by people that are handling boxes all day long. They don't. You can put all the fragile stickers you want on it. It doesn't mean they're going to be fragile with it. So apart from being without the computer during the time it takes to ship back and forth, apart from losing the money in shipping that you've already paid for once to have it shipped, you're without the machine and you've spent more money because I guess you were trying to save money by doing stuff yourself. And look, my channel is all about encouraging you to be self-reliant and to do it yourself. I'm all about that. But you've got to know your limits, right? You've got to know when you might be getting a little too far ahead of yourself. And something as basic as clearing a BIOS, if you don't know how to do that, you should not be at all entering your BIOS. The first thing you need to learn is how to clear your BIOS, because you will make a mistake in there. I've made plenty, believe me. But I didn't send it to somebody else to fix. I couldn't afford it. It was not an option for me. I had to figure it out on my own. And these are the days before the internet, right? So I literally had to ask people I knew and trusted for advice, and I had to experiment and be willing to pay the price of that experimentation. Meaning if I fried the motherboard or fried a component in the process of my education, I chalked it up as the cost of education. If you have to send it back because you've created a problem, I just think it's unfortunate. Like it's not in my head to work that way, though you positively can do that. I honestly take no issue with it. I'm just such a bad businessman, really, that I would rather you didn't have any problem with your machine. And one of the best ways is to leave it alone. When I sent a computer, and it's happened more than once, where we've given away the computers to disabled American veterans. I've had a couple of them say, I want to change the power supply. I'm like, it disheartens me, because I'm like, look, that machine is golden. Leave it. The idea was if you didn't have a computer, or you had a computer so old and so frail that you were eligible to get one of these free computers from me, and then the first thing you do when you get it is open it up and start manipulating it, internally, just me, I wish I would have sent that computer to somebody else. But they're not my computers, and I'm not the one who chooses the winners. Because to me, if somebody desperately needed that computer, they would not open it up and modify it and risk being right back to square one again. It is their computer, and it's theirs to do with as they choose. There's no crime being committed here. There's no agreement being broken. It's just in my mindset, when I don't have something, and I know how difficult it is to acquire it, there's a certain amount of gratitude that I have where I wouldn't want to risk going without it again. If you look at my car that's 6 years old, it looks like a brand new car. And do you know why? It's the only car I've got. And if it's a pile of junk, I'm not going to be happy. I worked too hard to purchase that car. Nobody provided it to me. It's the only car I've got. And I'm not rich. I can't just go buy another one. So I want to take care of it and make it last as long as possible. And when it's on its last legs, and there's, when I'm putting more money into it than it's worth, or more trouble than it's worth, then I will reluctantly turn it over and get a brand new car, which will then, I'll have car payments, but I won't have any more headaches, and I'll have reliable transportation, and I will take care of it and make it look like new and repeat the whole process again. That's just the way my brain works. I've got a friend that goes through stuff. You'll have something really nice, and 2 weeks later it's misplaced, someone took it, it's just gone. And it's just the way he's always been his whole life. And I'm kind of jealous of that, because as a result of that, he's had a lot more experiences with a lot of different things, because he has to keep replacing it. And he's never replacing it with the same thing. It's always what's ever available. So where I might have one cell phone in a period of a year, he might have 4. And they're not the same. He's got all these different experiences with all these different models. He's also not rich, which means if he does have something nice, he's surrounded by other people who are jealous of it, and if they find out about it, they'll steal it. So it's not all entirely his fault, it's his situation. So if it was me, and I had a really nice something, I would cherish it, I would hide it, I wouldn't loan it to anybody, and I would make sure I knew exactly where it was at every moment of every day. It was always in my pocket or in my line of sight, because it would be hard for me to replace it. And that's just the way I am. It's not right and it's not wrong. It's just the way I am. I guess I'm lazy, and I don't want to have to work that hard to have to keep replacing things. But if I do have to work that hard, I want to get paid for it versus me paying. I think that's the main difference. So I don't mind fixing things. But yeah, let's see where this computer's at. Let's switch over. All right, we've got a blue screen that came up here. And this may be a result of RAM. Something's happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the mem test, and we're going to go back to the original plan, which is to test the RAM. I only have one RAM module installed. And for all we know, that could be a bad RAM module. There's only one way to know, and that's to test it. The mem test software is completely free. You have to use a flash drive of your own, and you have to make it on a computer that works. And once you've got it, it's a great little tool to have in your toolbox to help friends or even to help yourself should you encounter the situation again. Okay, so I'm seeing something that I didn't notice before that's really, really bothering me. Right here against the side of the computer, the customer has put very strong magnets with a screw on the end. Now, there's nothing inherently dangerous about this other than the fact that it could break off, especially in shipping. And these little metal magnets, if they break off, they've got a little weight to them, and they're very strong. To put 5 of them together like that, and there's no reason that you should have to do this. I can't imagine any reason why anybody would do this. You don't see me do this on any of my videos. The screws either are screwed into something, or they go into a plastic bag in your motherboard box if you're not using them. This is bizarre. I can't say it's bad, but it's not normal. And if we don't follow a procedure in the industry, there's probably a reason why we don't, even if I don't know what that reason is. This does not follow procedures. Again, I find this disrespectful to the value of the machine, but to me, I can't afford this machine. So the last thing I would do is be this careless, because if I bought that, that would be the only one I could afford. Maybe this customer is loaded. I don't know. But I've been in this business for 30 years, nearly 30 years. I've never seen this before. Again, customer has every right to do this, but I don't know what precedent they're using to justify this. Where did this idea come from? What made this okay? Where have you seen this done before that you think that's okay? I guess that's what bothers me, because it very well might be okay. But why? Why not either use the screw or put the screw away? Why is that a procedure that needs to be changed? How does this improve that procedure? And what are the risks involved? And are they worth it? Just food for thought. Again, no right and no wrong here. Just different, unexpected, and as far as I can tell, completely unjustifiable. But what do I know? This is weird. Are there any other surprises? That got by me. That one, you know, I did inspect this before I turned it on, and I did not see that. It's hard to look for something when you don't know what you're looking for, you know? Okay, interesting, just interesting. Unexpected, different. That's all. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's flip back over to see if we can boot. Let's do F12, if I hit it in time. BIOS has been reconfigured, good, good, good. And we want to boot to the UEFI USB, which is memtest. And then you don't have to hit any keys at this point. It'll start and run on its own. You just have to be patient. It should start. Malcolm says, maybe the customer didn't do this, but had a third-party person upgrade the computer and overclock the machine, who clearly had no idea. Malcolm, you make a very good point. You make a very good point. But why they wouldn't have paid me to do that right out of the gate is beyond my ability to understand. Jay wants to know if the customer's in the chat room. It's not good. The question is motives, but this is very unusual. I'm not doing it to criticize the customer. I'm not doing it to embarrass the customer or to shame the customer. I'm just being honest. I still live in a world where people can be honest. And if honesty means you're going to get your feelings hurt, I just don't know which is more important, education or not educated, because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Like I can't control if somebody's hurt. I have no impact on that. It's certainly not my intent. It's not a good business model, right? It's not a good business model to embarrass people. It's not my goal here. But how else can I educate without setting examples of both the wrong way and the good way? If I can't demonstrate what's wrong without hurting somebody's feelings, then how can I teach? So none of this is meant to be personal. It's meant to be educational. It's a good question, and it's an interesting line that I have to, a tightrope that I have to walk. It's certainly not in my intention to alienate anybody. But it's also not my intention to not point out things that are concerning to me because I don't see the logic in it. That doesn't mean there isn't logic in it. That's me vocally telling you I can't find it. That's all. Scotty says this is entrapment. That's okay. I believe in honesty and I believe in being straightforward. And if that's a way of entrapping me, then entrap me all day long. I think you'll find me to be very consistent. I treat everybody equally. So the truth is the truth. It doesn't matter. Everything else is irrelevant as far as, in my world, it's sort of like, I didn't do this, somebody else did it, it wasn't me, and had they not done it, we wouldn't be in this position. Now, whether that was the customer or somebody the customer knows, it ultimately falls back on the responsibility of the customer. Either way. It's certainly not about shaming anybody, but we are all not going to get a participation trophy either. So we're going to identify, when you're diagnosing a problem, one of the things you want to look for is what's different, what's out of place. And there was a lot out of place, from missing screws and duct tape from the beginning, to magnets that don't belong, to a BIOS that needed to be reset, and a video card that was inserted incorrectly, apparently. From the looks of it, or it may have shifted in shipping, I simply don't know. Don wants to know if magnets can damage a hard drive. Well, the hard drive has a large, strong magnet within it. However, it's positioned in a certain place strategically so that it doesn't interfere with your data. But a very large magnet can corrupt a mechanical hard drive, yes. That's how we used to wipe hard drives at Intel. Hard drives that were failed or had to be sent back or destroyed went through a very large electromagnet conveyor, and it scrambled the drives. And it was a requirement of Intel policy and procedure that all drives that leave the building have to go through this procedure or they can't leave. Let me look through the chat. Maybe the customer's in here, because I'd like to certainly hear his side, because I don't know. I just don't know what the logic was here. But if he's in here and he wants to speak up, that's fine. If he wants to talk privately, we will certainly talk privately, just to let him know what's going on, what I found, and ask him a few questions so I can understand. There's clearly a misunderstanding here. I don't see anything in the chat room. So it's mentioning a blue screen from SATA being configured from AHCI to SATA, but we're not booting off SATA. We're booting off NVMe. There's no SATA drives, so that's not a factor. Otherwise, yeah, that would be a possibility, but that has nothing to do with NVMe. So. Nick says, I think this customer is playing with you. I don't believe that's to be true. That's a lot of money to spend to play with me. No, I believe this is sincere. But I do want to emphasize, the customer never said they opened the machine or changed anything. The customer never mentioned any of that to me. That was all kept from me. I was expecting a machine to come back unaltered. If I had known he had altered it, it wouldn't have changed anything. I still would have had him send it back. I still would be filming this. I would have opened it with different expectations. So I reacted from surprise, from an unexpected. When I opened the case, I did not expect what I saw. I was not prepared for that. But it really doesn't matter. The job still goes forward. So I'm looking through the chat right now. So I'm waiting for this test to finish on this one RAM module, and then we can proceed. So for right now, I'm just kind of looking through to see what I've missed in the chat. Excuse me. So this is a more realistic view. Again, more realistic. This is real life as a tech. And so everything starts based on what the customer is telling me. If the customer was local, it would be kind of less of a pain than shipping back and forth. But I will always support my customers. I will always be there for them. And if the customers continue this, they'll continue to pay for me to fix it. I mean, it's my business is to fix it. I'll never tell somebody no. And I appreciate the customer's business. You know, I want the customer to come back to me. I just hate the idea that they're coming back to me from a self-inflicted wound, you know, that was completely avoidable. DAZ says, Carey is his own worst enemy. This is true. This is true. I am a terrible businessman when it comes to this. I really want people to avoid having to use me. I want you to use me if you have to. But if this was avoidable, I just feel bad. I feel terrible about it. Like, why did you do this to yourself? So I'm going to replace all the missing screws. I don't care if the customer's got them or the customer has lost them. It's irrelevant. When the system leaves my hands, it's put back right. Whatever that takes. It's the only way I do it. There's no options there. That is not negotiable. It will be put back the way it's supposed to be. Now this video it should have the DVR mode enabled, meaning you can rewind this live video if you're just joining us and you want to see the original symptoms and the cover being removed and what I saw, what we all saw. You can rewind this video, even though it's live. You can rewind it right now to see anything that you've missed. Buller wants to know if there's any obvious damage to the connector on the GPU itself. Not that I noticed. Let me take another look here. You know, it's it looks like one of the gold connectors has got a little bit of the gold missing, but very little, maybe just like a millimeter, less than a millimeter. Nothing major, and it may have come that way for all I know. So no, the card looks fine. The GPU, which is a 2080 Ti, a very expensive graphics card, thankfully it looks fantastic. I don't see any damage or anything wrong with it. Nick says the reason I said the customer was playing with you is they did not tell you they messed around with the computer. Those extra SATA cables are interesting. Well, Nick, the extra SATA cables came with the motherboard and were included in the motherboard box because the customer always gets all the spare parts that aren't used in the build. And as far as playing with me, I don't think the customer conscientiously did this intentionally. I just don't think they knew any better. They didn't know to disclose this information. Or perhaps they were embarrassed by it and didn't want to disclose unless they were asked. And I didn't ask. So this is just as much blame on my part because I could have said, did you open the computer or change anything? And I've gotten so comfortable with my clients over the years that that hasn't happened that I stopped asking. So there's as much blame on me for not asking as there is on the customer for not volunteering information that could have been helpful. But that is on me. That's not on the customer. It's not their job to know what information might be helpful to me. Although you and I might think that's common sense, the customer may not give it a second thought. Like that may be completely irrelevant to the customer. So unless the customer is directly asked, I would not say the customer did anything with any intention. It doesn't make sense why they would. And this RAM module is looking good. We're on pass, what number are we on? We're on test, where's my test number? Test number 7 out of 10. That's going to be a little bit. And then what I'll have to do, if this one RAM module passes, I'll put the other 3 back in. I'll put it back with all 4 modules, and I'll run the test again. Rather than run each one individually, they all might be just fine. That doesn't make any sense for me to run each one individually. It'll take longer. So assuming they're all good, we'll put all 4 back, and we'll run the test all at once. And if all 4 pass, that'll be quicker than testing each one individually, having each one pass. If it doesn't pass, then I go back to testing them individually, making a mental note of which one I've already tested. Now, with regards to Windows not booting, it appears, if there's nothing wrong with the RAM, that the customer has corrupted Windows in maybe installing some software they shouldn't have, or creating a scenario where installing a driver they shouldn't have installed would cause a problem like this. Why I don't recommend you play around with drivers. When I ship, and I have to emphasize this, when I ship a computer to you, whether it's a repair or a new build or an upgrade, it is ready for you to take out of the box, plug in, and start using. If you start manipulating drivers or the BIOS or the hardware in the box, you may end up in this situation, and I will help you. And we can repeat this as many times as you want to continue to pay for the shipping. I'm fine. I'm completely fine. I just feel bad that you're not using the machine, that the machine's spending more time in boxes and FedEx is making more money because you won't leave it alone. But I'm okay with it if you're okay with it. So we're on what, test number 8, still taking a little bit. We've got 1,317 people watching this video, and I want to remind you the DVR mode is enabled, and that means you can rewind this live video at any point to see what you've missed if you're just joining us. Zach wants to know, did you ever get a customer that receives a PC, break it, and then try to claim you didn't send a working PC? No, that's never happened to me. What you have to understand is this involves a lot of money. And I'm not selling the computers. I'm not selling the parts. The customers have to figure out where they want to buy their parts. They can buy the parts from Amazon or Newegg or B&H Photo or wherever they want to buy their parts. I don't sell the computer. I'm advising them which parts to buy that fit their needs and their budget. And then I will assemble it, configure it, install the operating system and optimize it and box it up and send it to them. So again, all they have to do is take it out of the box, plug it in and start using it. Because of that process, it is not to my disadvantage for a customer to claim that I sent them anything other than what they ordered. Do you understand? Because all the parts are under warranty. So if, for example, the customer says, this isn't the board I ordered, the customer's got the receipt. So in a worst case scenario, the worst they could accuse is that it's a different serial number, but they never had it to begin with. And regardless, even if that were true, it's still under warranty. And what's the benefit to me in that? What am I to gain? So I just happen to have the same board laying around that doesn't work and I'm going to give it to a customer? And then I'm going to pay to ship it to the customer? How is that good for my business? Just so the customer can send it back to me so I can send the board back to RMA, which I could have done all along? There's just no logic in it. There's no game to be played here. There's nothing to be gained from me or from the customer. So that helps lock out that type of a scam or a loophole in my process. I figured this out a long time ago because there are some people who will take advantage. That's clearly not the case here. And we certainly don't want to accuse customers of that because that's not good for business either. Unless you have evidence of somebody doing something intentionally to cause you harm, you can theorize all you want. But at the end of the day, your goal is to have a happy customer if you want a sustainable business. How would you feel if some company said that about you? You know, it's unjustified, it's unfounded, it's irresponsible. I would never go down that road. And like I said, I have processes in place that ensure I don't have to. What I suspect at this point, I suspect now that I'm updating my projections here of what I think is going on. With the BIOS running correctly, and I'm going to look for a BIOS update just to see if there's been one for the heck of it. I think Windows is going to need a fresh install, and I think everything's going to be fine. The customer mentioned they have some files on the drive, so they don't want me to wipe the drive. They want me to recover the files for them and I will. But me and the customer will have a talk after this video is completed, and we're going to talk about whether or not there's going to be a fee for this, as it does not appear to be a fault of my own or a fault of shipping. It appears to be a fault of the customers. And the question is, who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for the time? And I'm a nice guy. So generally, I will do it once for free. I'll take care of it because I'm very customer service oriented. And I will make the customer aware that most people would charge for this, and I'm going to take care of it for you, and I'm going to recover your data for you, even though it was no fault of my own. I had no control over this scenario. You created it. It's your situation that you created. I will still help you, and I will still take care of you, and I won't charge you for it. But if you do it again, I will gladly help you for a fee. You will be charged for it. I think that is generally the best way to proceed. Make sure the client is aware. Make sure they know you're doing them a favor. Make sure they know you don't have to do it. And make sure they know if they do it again, you'll still help them, but it won't be for free. It won't be a warranty issue, because it's not a warranty issue right now. This is not a warranty issue here. There's enough evidence to suggest the customer, with magnets and missing screws, manipulated this machine and caused this problem. So in that sense, I'm a bad businessman. Most business people will nickel and dime and charge for everything that falls outside of policies and procedures. I'm not that guy. We're all human beings. We should be able to learn from our mistakes. It shouldn't be too costly. He's already had the inconvenience of having to be without the machine and having to pay to ship it back to me. So, this may cost me $100 to ship back. Customer may not feel obligated to pay it, and I won't chase after the customer for it, but I'll only do it once. If it comes back to me again, and it's again a fault of it's clear the customer's been in there and manipulated something, the customer can pay for it. If it appears the machine has not been changed in any way, shape, or form, and it appears to be a warranty issue, there still may be a labor charge, because it's not my fault if his graphics card dies. It's not my fault if his motherboard dies. So I will assist him in getting him a new part, or her a new part, as the case may be. I will go and fill out all the forms and box it up and ship it to the manufacturer, get the new part, install it, configure it, box it back up, and send it back out to them. And they will compensate me for my labor, the cost of the shipping, and the cost of shipping the board. That is normal operating procedure, and it's not gouging, really. What we're trying to do, ultimately, is have a happy customer at the end of the day, And a happy customer is one that never has to send your machine in to begin with. Now, the customer may offer to pay for the return. I'm not going to demand it. I'm just telling you guys, that's just not how I run my business. My first and foremost concern is I have a happy customer. I don't market my business. All the business I get is from referrals. So I don't want anybody having a negative thing to say about me other than I've been helpful. I didn't sell the computer. I only build them. So, if somebody goes in after me and starts manipulating what I built and it creates a problem, there's not much I can do about that. But I can still offer to, if they knock themselves down, I can offer to pick them back up again or help them back up. It's the courteous thing. It's the right thing. And I think it's good business, People don't like you. They're not going to do business with you, regardless of what you charge. Even if what you do is free, if they don't like you, they probably won't even take it for free. Carey, what's your normal fee for a customer who does not have to pay for labor outside of shipping? There is no normal fee. I would have to determine that based on the situation. Remember, there's a lot of variables in the cost of living, where you are, the cost of travel, where you have to go. Mike Smith in Philadelphia has to pay for parking and toll roads regularly. So that all impacts what somebody would charge. And what I charge is by no means an example of what you should charge, because those variables will change in your location, your competition, and your skill set. Sam says, Carey should take pictures of every computer he builds right after he finishes building them. Well, I do try to film as many of these builds as possible. That's what you see. You're seeing computers being built that are going to customers. This computer was filmed. You can find this build on my channel. It was in September's videos. Just look for the build with the 2080 Ti. There's not too many of those. You can see exactly what this computer looked like when it was shipped. And you can compare it to what this computer looks like when it was sent back. You can see that yourself right now on my channel. Harry says, why should you lose money on the return? Well, Harry, it's marketing. Here, let me put myself back on camera because you guys are probably just tired of staring at that. But I can minimize myself. I did this again. For some reason, OBS is defaulting to the wrong. Let's try that. I'll put myself down here, maybe. Bear with me for a second. I'll put myself right down here. How about that? That way we can still watch the screen together. When companies pay for advertising, like a commercial or print advertising, they're doing that to try and acquire customers. But how much do companies generally spend to maintain the customers they already have? And so that's my goal here. My goal here isn't to find this, like I think most people would see this as a money-making opportunity, to get more money from the customer. I don't see it that way. I see it as a way to help a customer in need who's relying on me. They're counting on me, regardless of why, regardless of fault. And a good customer experience results in the customer coming back again and or the customer referring friends and people they know, which is the effect, essentially, of putting out an advertisement. Only the advertisement that you put out may be going to an audience that's not listening and doesn't care. This customer does care. This customer is listening. And this can have a big impact. What if you find out later this customer owns a big company with lots of employees and he was testing me to see if I'm good enough to fulfill his computer needs for his company where he needs 50 computers? Or maybe his friend owns a company and maybe they need a dozen computers. And now that I've shown this kind of level of customer service, that has been the push they needed to say, that's the guy I want to go to. There's a lot I don't know. On the other hand, maybe this results in nothing more than good karma. Just do the right thing, and it's its own reward. That's why. There's been a number of occasions in my life where I've worked on a machine for somebody and didn't give it a second thought. And that person has come back and said, you know, I have this company and would you be interested in coming over and evaluating and seeing if you can help us there? And what was once a little one-time job becomes this giant opportunity for a retainer, a permanent, ongoing monthly retainer for years and years and years. You just don't know. So you treat everybody the same. You give them all the same level of customer service, regardless of any excuses otherwise. So mem test is almost done. We're on the, is this, I think, the final test? I think is there 10 tests or 13 tests? I think there's 10. What I'm looking for on the screen at the very bottom center, or I'm sorry, in the middle, direct middle of the screen, it says pass 1 of 4. When it goes to pass 2 of 4, that means that it will have passed the first series of tests once without errors, because you'll see right across it says error 0. That means that memory module is good. It'll repeat the same test 4 times or the same series of tests because some memory problems only occur when the memory module is heated up. But in this case, I'm satisfied that the memory module is good after one test. Viable Solution says, greetings from Ireland. Slancha. See, aren't I clever? I know Irish words, at least one. Thanks for joining us. Eric wants to know if I thought about what's behind the other side panel. There's just cables back there. It doesn't matter if they're neatly tied up or not. It doesn't matter. It's fine. So the test, just to give you an idea, this memory module is, what size is this? 16, I think these are 16 gig modules, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so each module is 16 gigs. And the more memory you have, the longer it takes to test. So when we put all 4 memory modules in, he's got 64 gigs. It'll take a good 3 hours to run memtest through it. But it's worth spending that time to have peace of mind before I go through the trouble of boxing it up and sending it back. I'll find 3 hours, you know? Some people have mentioned we haven't tested the graphics card yet. That's right. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. Until the machine is stable, there's no point in testing or adding anything to the motherboard or to the configuration that could impact our ability to determine what's at fault here, where the problem lies. So I first have to get the machine back up and stable. That may include updating the BIOS if there's an update. That may include taking out the NVMe drive since the customer has data on it and just temporarily putting another drive in it. Reinstalling Windows on a temporary drive, making sure that it works properly, it can get all of its updates properly, that it's functioning as it should. Once we've established the machine is operating as it should be operating, that the customer's data is secured, then we can put the graphics card back in, load the drivers, and test it. Because if we have any problems after that, then we know it's graphics card related. You'll see I order graphics card, well, I don't order them. I recommend EVGA to my customers because if the graphics card is bad, I've never seen EVGA deny an RMA unless somebody's being unreasonable and has unrealistic expectations. EVGA has been very good at standing behind their product, and I think this is an EVGA card. Yeah, it is. This is an EVGA RTX 2080 Ti. And in my experience, EVGA is very, very good at finding solutions, not finding excuses. I like their support is always answered by an American, so I don't have any difficulty understanding them. And they don't appear to be reading a script. They actually appear to be knowledgeable, technical people answering the phones, which is practically unheard of in this industry. And so if the graphics card costs $10 or $15 more, and especially when you're looking at a $1,200 graphics card, that's a fraction of the price you're paying to get peace of mind like that. And because the service and support is so good, it also equates that you're less likely to need it. So that's, even though it sounds like a commercial for EVGA, when it comes to their power supplies and their graphics cards, you'll see me use them a lot and recommend them a lot. I don't make any money from them. They're not a sponsor. They don't pay me in any way, shape, or form. As a technician that has to support what I build, these are the parts I recommend. And that's the reason why. I think test 13 is the last test. So this should be wrapping up, and it looks like the RAM is going to be error-free. Now, I don't use EVGA motherboards. I don't think they're good, but I do like their graphics cards, and I like their power supplies, and their warranty and their support is fantastic. I've had to use it very rarely, but when I've had to use it, they were there for me, and that's what's important. All right, we are almost done. We're 91% through the entire testing phase, 20% through test 13, and I think once it finishes test 13, it'll loop and start back over at test 1 again. And if that occurs with 0 errors, that RAM module is more than likely good. This is not a guarantee. This is a very inexpensive way to check your memory. And if it's bad, if it's clearly bad, MemTest will find it. If it's sort of bad, MemTest may say it's good, but that's unusual. That is not normal. So this is a good free test. You can all run it. You could have bad memory right now and not even know it. What ends up happening is you're only going to use the memory you use. In this case, this customer's got 64 gigs of RAM. So if they're not using more than 16, they may have bad RAM that they're never touching. So therefore, nothing ever happens. That doesn't mean you don't have bad RAM. It just means you haven't accessed the bad RAM yet. So you're sitting there using your computer going, I don't have problems. You might, you just may not be aware of them. Sort of like having cancer. I could have cancer right now and don't know it. It's entirely possible. So it's not a matter of being a hypochondriac, but it's a matter of having peace of mind that you check it from time to time. You get your doctor's visits, you get your appointments, and you look for signs of abnormality and correct them before they grow too bad. The same goes with memory. As memory becomes corrupt, it can corrupt the data being written to the drive. Once the data written to the drive is corrupted, the system may not boot anymore. It may exhibit behavior that is random and very difficult to diagnose. And so as long as it festers, it generally gets worse and worse and worse until it becomes completely unusable, just like any other disease. So Dave wants to know what happens if the GPU is broken. If the GPU is exhibiting any problems, I will contact EVGA. I will arrange for an RMA. I will box it up and I will return it on behalf of the customer, and I will pay for that. EVGA will send back another card that they have tested. Usually from the time I send it to the time I get a card back is about a week. When the card arrives, I'll install it, I'll test it. If the system passes all tests, it'll be shipped back to the customer. It's very painless. Or at least it is when you're working with a company that will support you, which EVGA has always done, and which is why I recommend their products, at least their power supplies and their GPUs, for that peace of mind. Everybody makes a product once in a while that fails. It happens. The question isn't how reliable are they? The question is how easy are they to work with if you have a problem? Do they make excuses or do they find you an answer? Are they responsive or do they just put you off? I found EVGA to be both responsive and available and helpful in every single case I've ever needed them. They have never let me down. And they have never made me feel like I can wait. It's a very reasonable shipping time. From the time I send it to the time I get my returned product, it takes a few days for the mail. And give them a day or two to process it. It's very reasonable. John wants to know if a customer wanted an AMD-based video card, what brand would you suggest? Oh, boy. Honestly, there really is no brand I would suggest. I think that you pretty much want to look for a name brand. If it's a company I've never heard of, I won't recommend it. But if it's MSI or Asus or Gigabyte, I'm sure it's fine. I think it'll be fine. I don't know. So I would just inform the customer that I don't have any experience firsthand and to stick with a name brand. That's it. And if they don't want to do that, again, they're buying the parts, and I would just let them know, you're taking a risk, you're taking a bit of a gamble. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I just want your expectations to be appropriate. So there's no surprises. You know what to do. If something bad happens, you flip a coin when it comes to contacting that company, and you'll find out and have to let me know. And I'll use that as a basis for future recommendations. Or not, right? We'll be pioneers together. But the customer needs to understand that's the trade-off. And if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I just don't want any false expectations. I don't want the customer to think it's equal or the same or better. I can't say one way or the other. So that's going to be up to the customer to do other research. In other words, find other sources of information besides me, and then decide what their budget is and what risks they're willing to take and how much money they're willing to spend. And as long as they accept the consequences of those decisions, I'm fine with it. I just don't want it to come back and bite me on the butt. If I tell somebody, let me just give you an example. Because I'm not selling the parts, and I tell somebody, well, you should buy this brand. And then they have a problem with that brand, and then that brand doesn't answer their phone number or return emails. Who do you think the customer's going to go after next? I guarantee you, it's highly probable I'm going to get a nasty email or phone call. I bought this based on your recommendation. You told me how wonderful it was, and I can't reach them. They don't return my emails. What was in it for me? What was my gain? What was in it for me to recommend that company? If I'm not selling the part, and yet I recommended somebody, and that recommendation turns out to be not meeting what I said it would be, why did I put myself in that position? What's in it for me? It's better to just say, I don't know, if you don't know. And it's better to say, you should ask somebody else who does know. Whoever that is, I don't know. But you can go online and you can do your research and you can read reviews. You can see other YouTube channels. And then you make your decision. So when I recommend a company like EVGA, there is nothing in it for me. If it's like I said it is, then I was right. But I can't control EVGA's employees or whether or not they pick up the phone. I have no control over their finances and whether or not they change their policy or procedure. They don't check in with me. So the only way this can work out for me is poorly. Unless I'm somehow profiting from it, which I am not. So I want you to think about that. And then think about if you were held to the same standard, would you be so quick to recommend products to people on the internet if you were going to be held accountable for it? You probably would not. You would probably just say, decide for yourself, because there's nothing in it for you other than risk with no monetary gain. Why would you do it? The only reason you see it so much on the internet and on YouTube videos, it's because the people have no accountability. When they make a recommendation to you and you listen to them and it turns out that you have a completely different experience, too bad. You're not their customer. They didn't make any money from you. You didn't pay for the information. Get lost. So I'm in a different situation than that. Ben DeCurs contributed $4.99. He says, thanks, Carey, for sharing your knowledge with us today. I certainly appreciate it. Well, Ben, thank you for your continued support, of course. I really appreciate that. Did I miss anybody's contributions? I think I might have. John Yasuda's contributed $20. He says, it's shocking. You need a good stiff drink after this repair. Good job, Carey. Well, I'm not done yet, John, but thank you. And, you know, John had sent his system in, if you recall. He had an X299 system and an X99 system. And we ended up building John a brand new computer, which I'm assuming is running great today. And John contributed that X299. He says, I don't want it, I don't need it, you can have it. I ended up fixing it the way I would want it, and I sent that to another gentleman in the chat room, Tony Wallow, because Tony's contributions have been so frequent, I feel like he's paid for it, you know? I feel like he's a viewer that really deserves it. Tony originally got one of the computers I gave away for disabled American veterans. I don't know that he's a disabled American veteran. This was before all that, because Tony had contributed a lot to the channel, and I felt like I owed Tony something. John didn't want the computer back, and it was a good lesson for me to explain how I was going to repair it, and that I didn't like these X299 systems because I find them to be very fickle and unreliable. So it wasn't in my conscience to sell it, because then I'd be responsible for it. So I had to find someone I could give it away to who would benefit from having it, under the condition that if you have any problems with it, you know, you're on your own, because it will probably have problems in my experience. So anyway, and that's all started because that was John Yasuda's old computer. So it was very generous of John to send it. It was very generous of Tony to contribute like he's been contributing. And it's a way for me to use that to educate you guys for good video content. And it all just worked out, like it all just meshed together beautifully. So that's all part of this community. Everybody's helping everybody. Sharon Idles contributed £2. She says, thanks for the show. Hey, thank you, Sharon. All right, so we're already running on pass number 2. If you look down at the bottom in the middle, I keep saying the bottom, but in the middle of the screen, it says finish pass number 1, cumulative error count 0. That's all I need to know. That's a good memory module. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't need any further testing, so I've shut it off. Let's go back full screen iron so you can see me again. There I am. Thomas Keats contributed $2.79 Canadian. I appreciate that, Thomas. Thank you for your support. If 1,300 people did that today, I might have a studio. But I'm grateful for what I have, so thank you. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm done with MemTest 86 for right now. I'm going to take that out, and we'll just set the flash drive aside and get it out of the way. I like to keep my work area. It's hard to tell right now, but I like to keep my work area clean. Because I'm going to start moving some parts around, I'm going to get this drink out of the way. Normally I keep it there, but I got a feeling things are going to get a little hairy here for a minute. So I'm going to leave the rest of these modules out. These 3 memory modules right here. I'm going to leave these out because these are an unknown. We don't know if these are good or bad. I'm assuming they're probably good. This is the graphics card. This is probably good. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The little, you can see right, if you look real closely right there, it looks like there's a little fleck missing off of that pin, right where my fingernail is. That may be normal. It may have come from the factory that way, or it could be damage. Either way, I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. The rest of the card looks completely flawless. Yeah, it does kind of have the same thing on the other side, doesn't it? Over on this side. It's like a little fleck that's missing. That just may be a manufacturing process. That may be completely normal. I don't have another one to compare it with. But either way, I don't see anything obvious. These are the magnets that we removed earlier with a screw attached. These are the 2 PCI covers that were connected together with duct tape. And these are the 2 screws that were holding the graphics card in place. We're missing screws for the PCI slot covers. We're missing 2 screws for the side panel. So far, I've acknowledged we're missing 4 screws that the computer was sent with that it didn't come back with. But I have lots of spares. That's really no problem. I just don't understand why it's a problem. It's an easy problem to solve, but I don't understand why that problem exists. The screws are there for a reason. I assure you, companies don't include unnecessary things at added cost. It's done because it's required. Whether or not you understand what those requirements are does not negate why it's there. Every company wants a bigger profit, and if they can make a profit by skipping on the screws, and it saves them a quarter of a penny, I assure you they'll do it. If Dell could get away with shipping computers with fewer screws, they would. But they don't. Whether or not you understand why that is, doesn't matter. They're there for a reason, and engineers have decided that it's not negotiable. So it is my advice to you that you do as the educated engineers do, and don't second guess them, unless, of course, you're an educated engineer in that field. Otherwise, you're probably going to find out the hard way why it was done that way. Maybe, maybe not. All right. I was going to look and see if I missed any contributions. Let me just take a look here. Oystein has contributed 200 Norwegian krona. He says, hey, Carey, what was your first PC and what were the specs? My first computer was a TRS-80 Model 1, but that wasn't a PC. I went from a TRS-80 Model 1 to a Atari 400 8-bit computer. And then an Atari 800 and 1200. I was a real big Atari guy. And then I saw the game Wing Commander, and I bought my first IBM compatible, is what we called it. It was a 286-12 that boosted to 16 with the turbo button. I think it had 4 megs of RAM and a 40 megabyte hard drive. I think that sounds right. Think very carefully about what I'm saying. 4 megabytes of RAM, 40 megabytes of hard drive storage. That was $1,200. Madi has contributed $10. Hey, thank you, Madi. And Nate R227 has contributed $1.99. He says, hey, Carey, enjoy the videos. Have a Coke on me. Thank you. David Anderson has contributed $1.99. He says, this is real world tech work. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing here. Okay, back to work. Thank you, guys. And thanks to everybody watching. Now, I got to get that NVMe drive out of here, and this big heatsink is maybe in my way. I'm going to try and remove it without taking the heatsink out because I'm lazy that way. The more things we have to manipulate, the greater the likelihood for damage. Whoops, mistakes happen. So the screw to remove the NVMe drive is right up in here, and I should be able to access it. The great thing about this Mugen cooler is the way it lifts away from the board so it doesn't interfere with RAM, and it looks like it's not interfering with the NVMe drive install. So I'm going to grab the screwdriver. It needs to be like a number 1 Phillips, and on my electric screwdriver, I have a number 2 Phillips, which is used primarily throughout the entire computer, except when it comes to like things involving SSD screws or M.2 screws. So I'm going to try and get in here as best I can. Mitch, my cameraman. That's what I need you right now, Mitch. Let's go right here. And I'm going to get my little door stop right here. And I'm going to jam that under here to keep my table from rotating. Now there is a thermal pad underneath this that's going to stick to the drive. I am using a magnetized screwdriver. This magnetized screwdriver does not have the strength of these 4 magnets, okay? So I'm not using that strong of a magnet, just so we're clear. And I'm going to try and lift this off if I can, because I know that NVMe drive is going to be stuck to it. There we go. It lifted off fine. Yeah, nice and clean. And then there's another screw holding the NVMe drive in. Well, and that one may actually be in the way. The heatsink may be. Oh no, maybe not. I have to go in at an angle, but I think it's going to work. And this is another reason why you shouldn't over tighten the screws, because this could be very difficult if the screws. There's a laptop hard drive repair video I did, or hard drive to SSD upgrade that I did. I could not get the screws out and I had to drill them out. That's what happens. That's what can happen if you way over tighten the screws, which in this case was done by the laptop manufacturer. Okay, so everything about this build is expensive. This is a Samsung 970 Pro Plus, and I'll have to put a link to this build video because this is a very high-end and expensive computer. This is not, in my opinion, this is not a toy. This is not a plaything. This is a very serious and expensive build. And there's something else I just noticed. If I rotate this, let's put it right about there. And I'm going to zoom the camera in and I'm going to show you something. I want you to look at that side panel I have not removed. We're going to bring the camera down a little bit here. Let's put it right there. This edge, this is supposed to be tucked in. If I can get something in there, let me see. I should not be able to stick my screwdriver down this groove. There should be no groove here. So this side panel has not been replaced properly. The side panel has tabs, and those tabs fit in so that this piece becomes flush with this piece. So it's all one flush piece. The fact that there's a groove there, it doesn't impact how the computer works or how reliable the computer is, but it's not done correctly, and there's a sort of laziness or a sloppiness to it that says it's good enough. Not in my book. I would never send a computer to a customer with the side panel not installed correctly. And so I think if you can't be bothered to put the side panel back on correctly, if you don't pay attention to that kind of detail, maybe a little more education would be helpful in ensuring that you're going to have a good experience if you're of the mindset that you're going to go in and start fixing things or upgrading your own machine. These little details can add up to problems if they're not followed. So even though you could say, well, that doesn't really matter, it matters to the state of the quality of work that was done in here by whoever did this. If this is okay, then that also explains why magnets and duct tape were okay. In my book, it's simply not okay under any excuse. I would sooner leave the panel off. But that's me and how I operate a business. Again, how you do things in your house varies very greatly in demands from the way I'm expected to do things for my customers. So again, this is why when I see hobbyists and enthusiasts making YouTube videos that are highly polished and scripted and edited, I shudder just a little bit. While I enjoy their enthusiasm and I'm glad they're spreading the love, I am concerned that it is misrepresenting what being a technician is, what it's all about, and why. You know, it's not just a matter of being a snob or being better than you. It's about explaining real-world business case scenarios as a technician, from responsibility and liability to the pressure and the stress and the kinds of things that you will have to be expected to take care of, which you would have never have considered. Like, why would anybody have done that? I don't know why. But regardless, it's your job to fix it. It's not your idea. It's not your job to know why. It's your job to make it right. So anyway, let me grab another drive to stick in here. Oh, here. I've got a 2.5-inch SATA Samsung 850 Pro. It's a little dusty. I think this was, if I'm not mistaken, I think this was contributed or donated to the channel for one of the veteran giveaways. So we're going to use it temporarily. It's an old Samsung 850 Pro SSD. And it's enough for me to install Windows on it fresh and clean, and we'll see if Windows installs without any errors. And then if it does, we can copy the data that the customer has from here using an enclosure, a USB enclosure that I've demonstrated on this channel. We can pull the whole users directory and put it on there, and even image it with Acronis, just in case we miss anything, and keep that image. So if the customer gets it back and says anything's missing, I'll still have it. But once I have the image of it, then I can clone, again using Acronis, everything the way it should be on this drive, back onto this one installed in the motherboard, and then remove this drive, and then everything will be exactly as it should be on this one. Did you follow all that? I hope you followed it. If not, you'll get there. You'll see. This is why I like Acronis. This is how it saves my butt, or at least makes my life easier, a little less complicated, a little less risk, a little more peace of mind. I'm a big fan of peace of mind. So this should be a blank drive, but regardless, it's going to become one. So I'm going to grab Windows 10 installation media, which I have a flash drive right here. This is my Windows 10 flash drive. Because this machine's already been activated with Windows 10, we don't have to activate it again. Once it's connected to the internet and we hit Windows Update for the first time, it's going to go, hey, I recognize this hardware configuration. Here's your product key and activation. It all happens seamlessly in the background. Okay, here we go. Now, in theory, I shouldn't have to select F12. The only thing this computer should be able to boot to is that flash drive, because I've removed the NVMe Drive, which is the only thing it could boot to. So in theory, the Windows 10 install should start, and it has, as predicted. So I will just click, there we go. I'll click Next, and Install Now. I'm going to click right here. It says I don't have a product key. I never, ever put my product key in during install. Never, under any circumstances. I know that the product key is a Windows 10 Pro product key. So I click Next. I have to agree to the end user license agreement and click Next. I always choose Custom Install for a clean install. Now it sees two partitions on drive 0, which means this is not a clean drive. So I have to delete both partitions, which is going to completely erase that drive, that little Samsung 2.5-inch drive I just plugged in. I'm going to be completely erasing it. There's no turning back. Like, be sure this is what you intend. The total size now with unallocated space on drive 0 is 238.5 gigs, which works out to 256 gigs if you multiply it by 1,000 instead of by 1,024. That's how we get to the different number. Anyway, click Next, and Windows now will automatically partition that drive and begin to install Windows 10. It partitions, formats, and installs. We just have to be patient while that happens. So while that's going on, I will minimize myself. Put me over here. And we'll just wait a minute for that to happen. How large is the NVMe drive? The drive, I believe, is 2 terabytes. I believe that's a 2 terabyte NVMe drive. It makes no sense to clone and then clone back. Yeah, it does, because I don't want to make any changes. I guess, so some people aren't following me, and I figured a lot of people weren't going to follow the logic there. But basically, I don't want to make any changes to the customer's drive until I've imaged it. And I'm going to use Acronis to image it because I've learned to trust Acronis. Acronis doesn't pay me. I have no benefit to tell you this. This is a real tool as a real technician that I'm using. Now, if you choose to not believe me, you can also choose to not watch the video, because I'm not making any money from you either. Okay, so there's no incentive for me to lie about it. But anyway, so without making any changes to the customer's drive, I want to image it as an emergency safety net. I'm also going to take what I think the customer wants, which is their user directory, and assuming this Windows 10 works okay on the Samsung drive that is just a scratch drive, assuming everything's going to work okay, then I'm going to copy the customer's data off of their drive onto this one. And if everything's working as it should, the customer doesn't want this drive. The customer doesn't want me to take their expensive NVMe drive. It's one of the, if not the most expensive NVMe drive on the market. I have to clone it back over to the customer's drive. Then I take my drive back and I can erase it, and the customer gets their drive back where it belongs with a working operating system and no missing data. That's it. Now, what happens if the customer calls me and says, I had data outside of the user directory? Well, I've already erased their drive, so what am I going to do? Well, that's when I'll fall back on the image that I made, and I'll be able to recover that data strictly through the image and be able to put it up on a cloud site where the customer can download it because the customer's out of state. So anyway, that's the logic there. I hope I explained it better. But thank you for criticizing me, whoever you are. It's totally, because I'm such a bad guy that I did something to you that I deserve for you to do that to me. I love the internet and how people just attack each other. It's weird, man. All right, let's see what other attacks I can find in the chat room. Let me look for them. You know, when you have nothing to hide, it's really kind of pointless. Nick says, I can do this blindfolded. I do it at least 5 times a week, if not more. Yeah, I feel your pain, Nick. But at least it's quicker than previous versions of Windows, you know? Which build of Windows 10 are you using? 1903? Yeah, I'll always use the latest publicly released version, because that's what I have to support. How much did the drive cost? It was around, I want to say $450. You can Google it. Just Google how much a 2 terabyte Samsung 970 Evo Plus drive is. You tell me. Carey, is the jumper still in place? Well, if you were there with me when I put the jumper on, you saw the motherboard won't start with the jumper on. So we would not be able to be where we are now. If the jumper was still in place, the board would not turn on. So I think you were able to answer your own question. It's weird because I explained that the whole time. It's weird to me sometimes when I have to explain something again that I already... I mean, I appreciate the question, but I already answered it. All right, we're getting ready for our first boot up here. And we're about ready to, here we go, here we go. The video is in DVR mode, which means if you're just joining us, you can rewind this video just like any other video, so you can rewind back to see anything you've missed. All right, let's see. Now let's go back to United States, yes. US, yes. Secondary keyboard layout, nope. I don't have an Ethernet connection. I don't want to do that yet. Continue. You see where I'm clicking down in this corner? And we'll put that name in there and hit enter. No password. I'm going to say no to this and decline. And I'm going to turn all this off. Except for location, because location will set the time zone and everything, so I'll leave location turned on, but everything else I turn off. That's just my preference. You can choose accordingly. And that finishes our Windows 10 install. So that looks good. Everything is running as it should. I don't see any issues here. And we'll let Windows finish up. Jen wants to know if I block any major Windows updates. No, those updates are critical. It'd be like saying, do you skip any vaccinations? What, instead get what the vaccination is healing? No, I think Windows update issues are widely overblown. Windows updates are tested far more than the entire operating system was tested 10 years ago. There are more beta testers now than there were users. So the likelihood of there being a problem after a Windows update is very unlikely. And while some people do experience issues, I find those are people who don't leave things alone. Those are people who've gone into their registry, or those are people that have questionable software. In most cases, they have manipulated their registry, or they have done something with their system that's why they're experiencing the Windows update issues. And then they blame Microsoft for it, and people like you believe it. So no, these Windows updates are generally very reliable. It is very rare that a Windows update causes a problem, and it's very common that people get problems because they didn't get the updates. So I'm a technician and I'm held accountable. If my customers' data gets stolen or they get ransomware because they didn't put an update on, or I did not allow an update that prevented it, which is how most ransomware and most viruses get on systems, is through exploits where patches were available and people refused them. You're just like an anti-vaxxer. You're welcome to get your disease. I don't want it, and I don't want to be held accountable. All my customers are vaccinated. And if there's consequences to the vaccinations, I very rarely ever see them, and I'll take care of it. It's really not a big deal. It's not worth the risk to assume that the vaccination's worse than the disease. Never. Not in the working world where you're held accountable. Now, you're a home user and you want to do things yourself, that's fine. If you work in a corporation, and the corporation has policies and procedures requiring proper testing before deployment to the population of the workforce, I totally get that. It's not to be questioned. But that's corporate policies and procedures are completely different because they have different security measures in place versus a home user who's just being fed incomplete information and then coming to a conclusion and causing themselves potential harm without accepting the free help. If Microsoft didn't offer those updates for free and they charged for them, you'd be more likely to update. It's unfortunate, but the general population does not see value in free. Microsoft is spending literally millions of dollars in research and development for updates that they're giving away, and you denying them is extraordinarily foolish, in my opinion. But it's your computer, so no, I absolutely have to update my customers with all the latest updates as soon as they come out. That's more important. What is the drive? They want to know the drive. The drive is a Samsung 970 EVO Plus, 2 terabyte. You can see I'm holding it up right here. You can Google the value of that drive. If you want to buy one of these, you'll see it says 2 terabytes. It says 970 EVO Plus. That's why I like doing video. You know, you can show people, and then there's nothing to argue about. But look up the price on that, just that one piece. In fact, while you're there, look up the price of a RTX 2080 Ti. Tell me how much those two pieces are. Forget the rest of this. Gary says the Samsung 2 terabyte 970 EVO Plus on Amazon is $449. And how much did I say it was? Who can tell me how much I said it was? Anybody? Was anybody listening? I don't know. I know what I said. Okay, anyway, Windows is installed. It's good. Now I want to grab Windows updates. That's going to automatically activate Windows for us. It's going to reassign the product key back to this machine. And it's going to ensure that Windows updates apply properly. That's why I'm not going to be using any slipstream updates or anything like that. I need to know that it can go out and get updates the way it will when the customer gets it, not the way it works in the shop. You know what I'm saying? I have to replicate exactly what it's supposed to do in the wild and not take any shortcuts. So I'm going to grab an Ethernet cable from my office. Pardon me while I walk away for a minute. And at this point of the build, this is when we plug the Ethernet cable in. The reason for that is if during the Windows 10 install, Microsoft senses you have an internet connection, it will require you to make an online account. You're like, Carey, how do you get around making an online account? Don't have the internet connected when you're installing Windows. Now I can connect it. I can remove my flash drive, which contains my Windows 10 install, and I can put that away and use it again in the future. All right, now let's grab the other end of this and plug it in, and then we can start grabbing updates. That's going to grab drivers for us. It's going to set us up, and then we can put the graphics card back in and test it if everything goes well. See, now that I've plugged the internet in, now it's like trying to get me to sign up. So I'm going to hit skip for now, which they put in fine print down here in the corner. Such clever marketing folks, aren't they? And then we'll go over here and we'll hit the gear and update. And we're going to grab the updates. Here we go. It'll take just a minute. LHAS has also said that the big businesses, big corporate entities are using Windows 10 Enterprise. This is a very good point that you've made with regards to Windows updates. Windows 10 Enterprise is handled differently on the update side. Good point. Mike wants to know if you should let Windows 10 do all the driver installs or use the DVD that comes with the motherboard. The DVD that comes with the motherboard is probably outdated. I would let Windows take care of it. I have never seen a failed solid-state drive in my life, so I don't believe there's anything wrong with the solid-state drive. I think the customer, through their fiddling around, has corrupted the data on it. I think it's physically just fine. I think the data's corrupted. I'll find out. If the drive is bad, I will certainly find out soon enough. But first, we've got to make sure that everything's running the way it's supposed to be running, so that if we have a problem with the drive, we know it's nothing else but the drive. So I don't make any assumptions. I go with what I want to check first based on experience, what I think it's most likely to be in order to finish faster, in order to be more profitable and have a customer wait less. But ultimately, until it's tested, you just don't know. Like that RAM, until I tested it with MemTest, I didn't know for sure. And even then, MemTest is not a guarantee. But generally speaking, if it passes MemTest, in most cases, it's fine. But there's still some exceptions to that, once in a great while, but not often enough to require secondary testing, unless problems continue and it's not making any sense. But so far we haven't seen any problems. Since I've started this whole process, everything's running exactly like it's expected to. Yes, there are plenty of people in the chat room that will tell me all about their failed SSDs, and I don't care about your failed SSDs. I didn't say you didn't have a failed SSD. I never said that. I said I've never seen one fail. I've never had a drive that I've installed, and I've never had a customer bring a machine to me for repair that has experienced a failed SSD. I've never experienced it in my entire, well, I'm not going to say my entire career, but since I started installing SSDs in 2013, I've never had a bad one. I've never seen a bad one. I'm sure you have. I don't know what that has to do with me. I love it when people challenge me. I love that. As you can tell, it just tickles me. Okay, so let's go back to Windows Update. We'll hit retry on that. And we'll let it repeat this process as necessary until all the updates are in place. System is dead quiet, by the way. Like, I can't even tell it's on. That's a good machine. That is a good, solid machine. Trevor says, I'm lucky. I'm lucky. Okay. It's weird. I find the harder I work, the luckier I get. Isn't that weird? I've installed over 100 SSDs over the years. How many have you installed? But I'm just lucky, I guess. It has nothing to do with the brands I select or the way I install them. I'm just lucky. Guess I'm lucky to know how to fix computers, and I'm lucky when I repair them that they don't come back for a secondary. It's all that is luck. And when I cook food and I don't poison myself, it's just more luck. I love the internet so much. What else you got? Hey, you play that piano really well. You must be really lucky. Really, it has nothing to do with practice and experience? No. No, you're just lucky. Okay. Bob wants to know if there's a test for hard drives. The hard drive manufacturers usually have testing software available that they design for their hardware. And you should visit your hard drive manufacturer's website to find that test software. Mike says luck is when preparedness and opportunity meet. I suppose that's true. It's not just dumb luck, just an idiot savant like Inspector Clouseau. How dated is that reference? Mr. Bean. Marty's contributed $5. Thank you, Marty. Gary says I should buy some lottery tickets. I know, right? You know, if I won the lottery, I would still be doing this. And I'd still take abuse from people telling me I'm an idiot, and I'm lucky. I'm sick that way. I guess I enjoy it. Some guy with a fake name who I don't know, who paid nothing to be here, wants to criticize me. I love it. I love it. It's too bad he's not alone. Or I might get bored and stop doing this. Looks like, a good friend of the channel here, Colin Hilton, has been in there. Sorry, Colin, I just saw you. And he's going to bed. Well, if you're still there, thanks for joining us, Colin. It's always good to see you. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Mike says, you are lucky. You have prepared yourself with extensive experience, and now you have an opportunity to use that experience. Well, I agree. Yeah, in that case, yeah. we're still getting an update here. That's a big update. Okay, that's the .NET framework it's working on right now. We'll get there. Where's everybody watching me from? Where's your state, city and state, or your country? I'd love to see how people from all over the world are watching me live right now. I can never get enough of that. I just find that fascinating. I'm alone in my kitchen and the world is watching me. Talk about Big Brother. Yikes. I better be careful. We're profoundly stupid. You decide. You're going to anyway. Mike's in Corona, California. Sinmars joins us from Latvia. Very cool. Greece, Virginia, California, North Carolina. More from California. Mike Dane says, Carey, you're amazing. Have a Coke on a Dane. Contributed $5. Thank you. Missouri, Tennessee, Oregon, the UK, Charlotte, North Carolina, Denver, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Oceanside, California. I grew up near there for a short time. Cadillac, Michigan, Cocoa, Florida, Manhattan, Winchester, Kentucky, Darien, Georgia, Toronto, Canada. Dante joins us from Trinidad and Tobago. Fort Smith, Arkansas, Henderson, Tennessee, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Grimsby in the UK, Columbus, Ohio, Vancouver, Canada. Madi says Israel, but I don't think Madi's in Israel, from Israel. Daniel joins us from Switzerland. Mike in Wyoming. Charles in Northern California. Trevor in Dublin, Ireland. Alex joins us from Fairfield, Iowa. Roy joins us from Northern Ireland. And Peter from Scotland, Aberdeen, Scotland. Patrick from Kettering, Ohio. Noman Jones from Ann Arbor, Michigan, my home state. Colin says, I'm fine, thank you. I've enjoyed the stream and learned a lot tonight. Right on, Colin. Thank you. As always, my deepest gratitude. 55 Staying 2 joins us from Oklahoma. Anthony says he's from Georgia but living in Indiana. And Dale's watching us from Victoria, Australia. And Neil is in Michigan. Kaloon is in Norway. Alistair's in Cornwall in the UK. Oh, I got to restart the computer. Hold on. Let me restart. All right, where was I? Nigel's in New York. Tsatsi is in Greece. Mark Crippen is in Lansing, Michigan. Oh, I got a lot of my Michigan bros in the chat room. John Davison joins us from Northeast Thailand. Welcome in, John. John was also a contributor on the Threadripper build, which I still have to get back to replacing it with something Intel. Maybe a system like the one behind me. What else we have? Matt's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Marine Raptors in Alberta, Canada. Canassa is in Chicago. Winston joins us from Vancouver, Canada. Jay Gordon is also from Aberdeen, Scotland. Stephen Spencer joins us from Ontario, Canada. Dave Murray, of course, from Bonnie Dundee, Scotland. Wesley Green joins us from Barbados, and Gigi is from Sofia, Bulgaria. Daniel joins us from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. DJJ is in California. Mike Casey says, this is better than watching UK TV. I don't know, I watch a lot of UK TV. I saw Travel Man had started up again. You guys watching Travel Man with Richard Ayoade? What a great show. It's a British television show based on taking a vacation for the weekend, or what I guess they call it, a mini break. You gotta listen very carefully. Richard's like a poet. You gotta listen to every word he says, and he articulates it so beautifully. Sometimes I need to put the subtitles on to catch this deluge of information he bombards upon you very rapidly. And I get to travel the world without leaving my couch, which is wonderful. James joins me from Biloxi, Mississippi, and Hubert from Sterling Heights, Michigan. Joe P. is in Iowa. Kyle Ebert's in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Ricky is in Amsterdam, and Eddie joins us from Philadelphia. Roscoe joins us in Greece, and My Two Cents is in Chicago. Thomas is in Manchester in the UK. William Lynn joins us from Santa Clara, California. Wayne joins us from Oregon City, Oregon. Arnold Albert joins us from St. Lucia. And Luke Greeny is in Highgate, Vermont. I'd love to visit Vermont one of these days. I've never been there. It looks beautiful. Gary joins us from South Jersey. And we've got viewers in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, Croatia. There's a few I missed. New Zealand, Manawatu, New Zealand, Newfoundland, Canada. The Supreme Nerd has contributed $1. Hey, thank you for that. Johannesburg in South Africa. Joburg. We'll just call it Joburg. Karen joins us from Fort Worth, Texas. All right, let's get back to Windows Update. Let's see if we're still missing anything here. So far the machine is not exhibiting any unexpected behaviors. Everything's working exactly as it should. Tommy Turner's just contributed £2. He says, cheers, Carey from Leeds in the UK. Cheers, Tommy. Thank you very much. Wheelchair's watching us from Hollister, California. Traincraft is in Pennsylvania. Big John's in Germantown, Wisconsin. 191/7 joins us from a city I've never heard of. I'm going to try my best here. Vravatica. I might be mispronouncing it. In Croatia. Very cool. Kevin Lavis joins us from the UK. Ben joins us from Budapest. Joe in Iowa. Chris in Indianapolis, Indiana. Bradley watches us from Massachusetts. Robert joins us from Florida. Peter from Stanton, Texas. Larry from Cincinnati. Leon from Paraguay. Daniel from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Orange from Lanark Highlands in Ontario, Canada. Used to cross over into Ontario all the time when I lived in Detroit. Our Quentin joins us from Queens, New York. Jacob joins us from Kansas City, Missouri, as opposed to Kansas City, Kansas. And those of you not familiar with the American geography, as if that wasn't confusing enough, they're located right next to each other. So good luck. Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas are like that far apart. No confusion exists, I'm sure. John Mitchell says, hello from the Highlands of Scotland. I love how many Scottish viewers I've got, because Scotland's such a small place with such a small population. The number of viewers per capita coming from Scotland is weird. I should do a meet and greet there. Love it. James Earl is also in Scotland. Mark Baggett said he's watching from Massachusetts. Vern Mahorny, he says, I love this worldwide group. Yeah, me too. It's unbelievable. Stooney Sands says, greetings from the Netherlands. I think you're testing me. Lissardingen. Those letters don't go together. We're missing a vowel somewhere. Lissardingen. I'm trying. I swear I'm trying. Matt Foster joins us from Kent in the UK. Vern Mahorny's in Olathe. Is it Olathe or Olathe? I'm never quite sure. I see a lot of corn during corn season at the grocery store that says it's coming from that city. Olathe? 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 I think that's from your city. Grippin90 joins us from Scandinavia, Denmark. John Vasquez says hello from Virginia. Gamer PS1234 is joining us from North Wales in the UK. BW joins us from Canada. Don Walters joins us from Clarion, Pennsylvania. Thanasis Kostadoglu joins us from Athens, Greece. Yeah, Vern says that Kansas City confusion is even more fun when you live on a state line road. Yeah, I believe you. Canassa says, I learned a lot from you. You're my professor in electronics. Whew. Oh, I hope you're not getting a test anytime soon. Brendan Looney is in Swansea in Wales. Nice. Marco Di Barandinas joins us from Italy. John Dorrington says he's watching me on a Raspberry Pi from the UK. And Hayden says he's watching from Trinidad in the West Indies. Very cool. John Paul Bacon says hello from Federal Way, Washington. And Rodney Sharp is from Michigan. Oh, time for a restart again. Let's restart. Michael joins us from Huntsville, Alabama. Thanks, guys. Thanks for telling me where you're from. That I know out of 1,300 people, I didn't read 1,300 locations because most of you won't participate in the chat. But for those who do, I want you to know I appreciate the back and forth, you know. Otherwise, it's just television, you know? Which is fine. Don't leave your comfort zone. Bud joins us from Michigan City, Indiana. Olathe. It's a long O, a long A, and a short A for the E. So, Olathe. And he pronounces it Olathe. I think that's right. Olathe? Is that it? I'm never going to remember this. But thank you. I sometimes pronunciations are hard to. Zvi Manor says shalom from Israel. Sorry, we're having a little bit of a connection issue here. It looks like the connection kind of dropped a bit, but it's back now. I wasn't talking when the connection dropped. The last thing I said was, there's Zvi Manor says shalom from Israel, so shalom. And I'm going to go back to Windows Update again. And now I think we should have all the updates. Let's just check, just to be sure. Now remember, as fast as this machine is running, it's going to run faster when we convert we put the NVMe drive back in as our boot drive. But before I do that, I want to make sure I don't have a graphics card problem. So we're going to, everything's good. I don't need to take it any further. I could optimize things, but I'm not going to bother right now because it might all be for nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this machine down, which it just turned off. We'll go back to full screen on camera 1 here so you can see me and see what I'm doing. And please note, I am unplugging the power connector. And I'll hit the power button. I just want to make sure this thing doesn't have any residual power in the capacitors before I plug this very expensive graphics card into it. Make sure that that clip is in the open position. Now remember, I'm going to have to get back. I'm going to have to pull this card out to put the NVMe drive back in. And I'm prepared for that. It's worth it to me to check everything before I reassemble. Yeah, the card has a weird bend to it. It's very strange. I'm not going to put the screws back in it because I'm just going to take it back out. So we'll leave the screws out of it for right now. for that purpose, because I know it's coming back out. That just fully seated. I want to remove the HDMI cable from the motherboard, but we were using the graphics chip built into the CPU. And now we're going to plug in to the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti. And we're going to turn the system back on again, which means I have to plug it back in first, Carey. And then before I turn it on, I'm going to switch you back over to... Here, let me minimize myself again. Once again, you're going to see the no signal on your screen. That means that this computer is not sending a signal to the video capture card. I'm going to hit the power button. You'll see everything starting to spin. Graphics card fans are turning. It's firing up. So far everything seems perfect. Now Windows will automatically download the driver for this card. They'll download whatever latest driver was provided to them by NVIDIA. Manufacturers who don't participate with Microsoft don't have their drivers offered by Microsoft. So when you buy these smaller manufacturers like AMD, you'll often find you have to go and grab those drivers manually. These companies have to pay to play, and they don't want to pay. They pass the savings on to you, but it means more work and research for you to go and get your drivers. But in general, you stick with Intel, stick with NVIDIA, things just happen automatically. Now, in this case, we may not get, most likely we're not going to get the latest driver, but we'll get the latest one provided to Microsoft, which won't be very old. So that'll just take a moment, and you'll see the screen, it'll sort of blank out as the driver is being installed. And if I want to, I can put the driver in manually. I always have the latest driver from NVIDIA on a flash drive. I've got it right here. The problem is, if I'm trying to install the driver while Windows is installing the driver in the background, it creates some interesting results. Let's see what happens. All right, we'll go, ooh, my stomach's making some noises. Time to eat, Carey. Oops, I screwed that up. Let's do it again. Go to Drive D. This should be the latest driver, the 440. Oh, this is the wrong driver. You know why? This is the driver for GTX cards, so that's not going to work. Pretty sure that's not going to work. Oh, there. Hold on. That's interesting. So what we're seeing here is a graphics card issue. That happened when the driver installed. It may not be a problem, or it could be. That's not normal. And it's certainly something that we need to further investigate before we worry about putting the NVMe drive back in, etc. So I'm going to go to NVIDIA.com, and we're going to go to drivers. And the screen is really big. What kind of drivers do I want? I want GeForce drivers. And I want RTX 2080. It's actually a 2080 Ti, but that's fine. It's not for a notebook. Windows 10, standard, start search. Latest driver was released 2 days ago. And we're going to save that, and it'll download here pretty quickly. Gamer PS1234 has contributed 10 pounds. He says, thanks for such a great channel. Keep up the great work. And he scrolled off. Hold on. And keep giving us your, not in a bad way, infectious personality. Well, to you, it's not a bad way. To other people, it is. But thank you. I appreciate it. You know, it seems like kind words and support are so uncommon on the internet. It's very important for me to acknowledge anytime people exhibit it. I hope to encourage others to be kind to one another. It's just its own reward. It really is. All right, let's go ahead and run the driver. Thank you for the contribution, by the way, and the support. Let's install the driver. Okay, let's close this window. I don't need it anymore. Let's keep talking in a sing-song voice. There we go. Now, based on the behavior of the graphics card, I thoroughly believe this thing's going to really need to be tested overnight, pushed hard. The equivalent of a Prime 95, what it does to the CPU, we need something like that for the graphics card. We need to push it hard for a long period of time to see if we can bring any problems out in it. If so, it'll need to go back to NVIDIA. And NVIDIA, I have no doubt, will send us back a reconditioned card that they've tested, which I prefer. I don't want them sending me a new card that's been untested. I want a card that they've tested. I've heard a lot of people complain. I've sent them a new card and they sent me back one refurbished. You better hope they sent you back one refurbished. Refurbished doesn't mean it was repaired. Refurbished means it was thoroughly tested, far more thoroughly than what's happening on the automated quality control on the assembly line. So you're more likely to get a good card. It's the same warranty, everything's the same. It's not like they're sending you something necessarily used, although it could very likely be used. It won't be like, in all likelihood, it won't be used more than the card you sent in. Okay, the installer can't continue. That suggests to me that I've downloaded the wrong driver. So what I'll do here, this was a lesson I learned a while ago, not too long ago, and I will share it with you, because as I didn't know it, I imagine many of you don't know it. We're going to go back to NVIDIA. We'll go back to, I'm in the way, so let me just close my video out so I can see. There's what I need. This, back to drivers, GeForce drivers. And what I want to do here, well, I don't know why this defaults to notebook. That's very strange. I want to change the standard driver to the DCH driver, and then it'll probably work. In my opinion, NVIDIA needs to find a way to combine these into one driver and then install the, there can't be that much difference between the two. I mean, the file size is nearly identical. So there's got to be a way they can tweak it. Or for all I care, give me both drivers and I'll download a gig, I don't care, just so I can click install and let the darn thing be done. Because I don't know how to tell, other than one fails, use the other one, which is pretty barbaric. Or you use NVIDIA's automatic updater, but you can only get that after you've installed the driver. And if you can't install the driver, you might not understand what's wrong. So there are two different versions of the driver. Everything's moving to the DCH model. So ideally, in the near future, there won't be any alternative but the DCH driver. And that option will be removed. So we're going to try this one more time. Here we go. All right, so we should have better luck now. So far, everything looks good. That one didn't take too long. And let me get my flash drive and we'll throw a graphics test on here. Oh, the flash drive's still plugged in, Carey. All right, I'm ahead of myself. So to test this, On the flash drive, I've got the Heaven benchmark, which requires the Visual C redistributable decompressor in here. There's one. We have to install the 32-bit one, which is weird, but that's what it requires, it being the Heaven benchmark. That's two. Now we can install Heaven from Unigen. All done. And what do you mean a GeForce Game Ready driver's available? I just put it on. What are you talking about? This bothers me. Let's turn that on. Why it's off by default, I don't understand. Okay. Did I start the Heaven benchmark? I don't remember. Here we go. Now, to help avoid the confusion that sometimes people have with frame rates being the same and copyright claims that are false, I'll keep myself in the corner. That alters the video enough that it won't flag anything. And where's my mouse? Just give that a second to load. Jay Finaris has got a link to what the DCH drivers are. Thank you for that link. Intel also provides new DCH drivers and have thoroughly explained that that would be the direction of all their drivers from this point forward. So I imagine NVIDIA's explanation will be very similar to Intel's, and it's a welcome change. So my plan at this point will be to run this test, and if this test passes, I will stop the video for today. We'll pick it up tomorrow because it's I'm running about a half an hour later than I like to run. I also got started a half an hour later. So technically I'm on time, but just late. But this part is taking longer than it should. I feel like something should have happened by now. So we may be looking at a graphics card issue here. I'm going to give it just a little bit more time. People are mentioning the noticeable bend in the graphics card. It is bent upwards, which is odd, and I don't have any explanation for that, especially with a back plate, which should make that card even more rigid and even more difficult to bend. That's possible. It happened in shipping. Whether or not it arrived to the customer that way or it arrived to me that way, the customer did not have it packed correctly. Unfortunately, the customer did what I said literally. I assumed the customer was going to put it back the way they got it. They did not. They sort of handed it off to FedEx and said, take care of this. And FedEx essentially put it in another box that was no bigger than the box it already was in, which is the box the case came in, with no added protection. Furthermore, the side to mark up was incorrect, and it was not shipped correctly, but it wasn't going that far. So I don't know if that happened when I shipped it to him or when he shipped it to me. I don't know. I just don't know. It does seem like the test has locked up. It never takes this long. Something is not right. So the next thing I will do is move this card into a different slot. There could be damage to the socket. It's highly unlikely. It's more likely, given the obvious bend on this card, something is like a cold solder joint or a connection is broken. And that would explain that behavior. It's one of those where it's not completely broken, right? It still works, sort of. And so I have to talk to the customer now and figure out what's going on. What did the customer do? What hasn't the customer told me? What else should I know? And explain to the customer what I've discovered so far. I'll encourage them to watch this video. Yeah, we're locked up here. Let's go to the task manager. Task manager's not coming up. I can't seem to close it. Okay, that's all I need to know for right now. I'm going to go ahead and shut the machine down. And let me go full screen here. So there is definitely something wrong with the graphics card. The first thing I noticed was the weird symbols that appeared as the driver was installing. That's certainly not normal. The software loading does take a little bit, but it shouldn't take that long. And furthermore, my inability to close it suggests that it was locked up. If I restart it and it works, that doesn't reassure me there's nothing wrong with the graphics card. I've done this test enough times. In fact, did this same test on the same hardware when I shipped it and didn't have to restart it to make it work. So there's clearly something wrong with the graphics card. At this point now, I will have to talk with the customer. I will talk to get an RMA to NVIDIA to have the card replaced. And then we'll follow up when the new card comes in. We'll continue this process. In the meantime, I appreciate everybody who's contributed during today's broadcast and joined me on this little venture of repair, live, unedited, and real. My thanks to everybody who's contributed. I see contribution came in from Caleb Johns. He wants to know which CPU brand do you prefer. You need only watch my videos to see that. Gamer PS, Tommy Turner, the Supreme Nerd, Kevin Lavis, Oystein, Mike Dane, Madi Yoel, Gary Tatum, Winston Anglu, Thomas Keats, Sharon Idle, John Yasuda, Ben DeCour. Oystein has contributed twice. Thank you for that. I just noticed that. My apologies for not noticing it earlier. Madi Yoel again, Nate R227, David Anderson, Randy Hopkins, John Craig, Chester Hughes, Kevin Lavis again, Brendan Looney, Jeremy Kramer, Andrew Epperson, Ben DeCour again, and the first contribution today by a loyal follower and supporter, one of several. His name is Jesse Kirk. Thank you, Jesse. And of course, Madi and Oystein and everybody who contributed numerous times during the broadcast. Thank you for your contribution and thank you for your continued support. I appreciate that more than I can express in words. That's going to wrap it up for me today. I will see you all again, ideally tomorrow, if everything goes well, with another project and a follow-up update on what's going on with this. I'm probably going to be packaging that card up and putting it in the mail tomorrow. So I will see you all again very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.